A whole new... Welcome.
That's basically what this episode is.
A whole new world. Now, I was going to just call this episode A Whole New World. However, we are going to probably carry this through to the end of the game here. Just right here and now. We're just going to take it all the way through. Chapter 4 is quite a bit shorter. Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly shorter than Chapter 3.
Oh, yeah.
But it might even be shorter than Chapters 1 and 2. It's much shorter than Chapter 3 was. And I think we might be able to just take it all out in one go.
Let's just finish it.
So we made it to the new world. Actually, did we talk yet about, though, the attack on the boat?
No, we had just basically gotten to the point where Columbus shares his navigation knowledge with the other sailors, and they're like, okay, now we can go find the freaking
Not only
new world.
Do these other places exist, they're just fully developed, towns and stuff. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the boat ride over, there's kind of like a ghost attack, right? Yep. I think there's a character on the boat that says, be careful, don't look out on the ocean. The ocean ghosts will come and get you. And like Ark is supposed to be protecting Elle, right? And Ark just like goes to sleep. And then Elle is just sitting there, just like intently staring at the ocean. And then we wake up in the middle of the night because there's all this commotion aboard. And you get up, and even the people on the boat are just like, whoa, those things are real. There really are ghosts. Like, everyone's freaking out. And Elle is like just laying on the floor. So we got to fight the ghosts and then wake her up. And so we saved her again. And she's very indebted to us, but at the same time, she's holding this like hidden sorrow under her cloak that's like, oh, we don't know exactly what. Turns out she just can't stay around Ark for very long, it seems. She's got to keep going. I think she even confides in him a little bit on the boat here, saying, hey, I did a really, really bad thing. If you knew about it, you wouldn't be protecting me. So for your own good, she, of course, tells him this later. I think she writes a note. But for your own good, I'm leaving, right? Yeah. I'm out. So she's gone as soon as we get there, basically.
Yeah, I liked this
scene. Freedom, Georgia, which is a real city, by
the way. Yes, it is. Most of these places are based on kind of real places. Yeah. They just have weird names like Storkholm instead of Stockholm.
I love that, dude. And, like that didn't even save them a character.
No, I don't know why
the
they
C
did
with
it.
An R.
I don't know why they did it. But it's funny. I mean, it's not like out of place. It's not like, oh, that was a mistake.
Well, and that is part of what's happening here in this world is that things are similar but slightly different. Yeah. Right? And so I think that maybe the naming conventions are keeping to that.
It's a super truncated history of the Earth that flies past, and this goes all the way back to what we've been talking about at the beginning. Yeah. It's meant to feel like a blip. We're making the whole history of the Earth feel like a bloop in the eternal cycle that is going on here. But anyway.
And Litz, I think, is supposed to be Lisman. Is that it?
Probably.
Litz, yeah.
Anyway, this conversation on the boat is really nice, though. It's the first time Elle lets her guard down a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
This version of Elle, I should say. This topside version with the orange or red hair versus the Elle we know with the purple hair.
The purple hair,
back in Krista.
Potpourri.
And, she lets her guard down a little bit. I think there's a question she asks. I can't remember what it was, but if you answer in a specific way, she's really mad. She asks about whether the personalities are the same.
Yes, that's right. And you either can say, it's not yes and no. You either can say, oh, totally different, or a little bit different. Those are like your two answers, basically.
And I think I actually answered, it's totally different. And she gets like really upset.
Yes, I didn't. I gave the more moderate answer, to which she's just like, well, and that's where she kind of says like, you wouldn't think that if you knew more about me, basically,
right.
And so, because I think Ark even says something like, oh, I think there's probably some part of you there that's, good. That's the moderate answer. And she's basically, oh, you don't know me yet. I'm so bad. That's just the way she sees herself.
The implication here is that she murdered the king.
She murdered the king. You can kind of deduce that.
Yeah, fled the country and is trying to escape to the Americas.
Yeah. And she even brings up too, like, you have nothing to gain from protecting me. I'm not even a princess anymore. And to be honest, I never really was, at least not of that wealthy kingdom. Mm-hmm. So you're really not going to get anything for this. And Ark is just like, eh. And it's so funny to hear her too, when she goes, so do I really look like the girl you're in love with? I can almost imagine a girl, like she could take advantage of him so hard here if she wanted to. She could just like play with him so bad. And there maybe part of her may want to do that even just a little bit, just to, see like, ooh, this is what luck, this guy will do anything for me because I happen to look like, let's see if I can wind him around my finger. But she doesn't. She resists that temptation and she just kind of disappears.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you wake up the next morning, there's the note and she's gone now. And you head up to Freedom.
Yep. Freedom.
And this part of the game kind of ends up turning into going to different towns throughout the world and doing the quests, which will, there's some of them you don't have to do, which we've already explained, the parts that actually expand the towns.
Yeah, those 4 or 5 towns, yeah.
But essentially, this is where a lot of that would be done. You do get access to a ship, and now you can sail to different places in the world and explore it. So the game is opening up gameplay-wise at this point for you to go explore and look and
that you
do
can
stuff.
Almost go anywhere once you get that boat. I think there's parts of Russia you cannot get to. Is that it? There's only a few places you can't get to.
You can't get to where you basically learn about Baruga.
Baruga, yeah.
And that comes through the main story quest where you're helping to develop the airplane, basically. Yeah. And the airplane is the vehicle that allows you to get there and sort of progress the story into the Baruga arc of this, who is a villain that essentially he's in some kind of vat or something like that.
Yeah, something
he
like
preserved
that.
himself from the last cycle.
Right.
So he survived through the apocalyptic cycle and created technology to resurrect himself in this one and continue his quest for immortality. That is essentially Baruga's quest is I'm going to make immortality for human beings.
But not all.
So that we don't have
not
to
all
die.
Human beings.
And
only some human beings.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we get to that, you have some really great town expansion side quests and stuff. Again, they have just like going back and Eddie, who is supposed to be Thomas Edison,
that one's fun.
Or Bell, Alexander Graham Bell, who invents the telephone. So you help in the invention of electricity.
Even the airplane guy is it Wilbur or it's one of the Wright brothers, right?
Yes.
It's I think it's Will or something. Wilbur.
Yes, it is Will. Yeah. And he doubles as like Wilbur. The older kid who's like running the little
like a daycare
orphanage. And a couple of my favorite parts of the game happen here. First of all, when you enter Freedom, you meet Peril for the first time.
Peril.
The skateboarding.
He's so fun. He's like, hey, I want to show you something real quick. And it takes a long time. It's like a 2-minute cutscene.
He does his like skateboarding routine. He's like flipping around all over the place.
It's hilarious.
And
it keeps getting more ridiculous.
In my review of Terranigma years ago, the retrospective I did, I think I said, and I probably still hold to this in a certain sense, not like, in the literal sense, but that he's my favorite character in the game.
he's
because he represents, I think, so completely a period of time of my childhood that you just don't get unless you were there.
Yeah.
Like that attitude of kids and the way I think we've talked about a little bit, even kids' products and toys were advertised, the way that dialogue was written for shows.
Yeah.
There was this, it's not edginess as in like true edginess. It's like this kid-friendly edginess, this attitude, this sort of rebellious attitude.
The Sonic the Hedgehog kind of.
Yeah, that was like really prevalent for kids' media throughout that decade. Mm-hmm. And Peril is almost the perfect representation of all of that.
Yeah.
That is a thing lost to time, I feel like, in kids' media.
I think so, absolutely.
And so when I met this character for the first time in the game, I was like, this is the embodiment of a 90s kid. This is 90s kid.
Yes. This is what 90s kids wanted to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any 90s kid playing the game would have been like, that's cool.
Yeah,
like that's who I want to be like.
Yeah.
And so I ended up just calling him 90s kid. That's who he is to me. He's 90s kid. So anytime I bring up 90s kid, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Peril.
That's funny.
The skateboarder, he's got the baggy clothes, he's got the hat on backwards.
Yeah. The way he talks.
He's got this confidence and attitude.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid, to say he's blunt in the way he talks. He's not going to hold anything back.
Do young kids still say yo? by chance? Or is
I don't know.
Is that a product of this era?
I don't talk with kids very much. So.
I probably do more than you, and I don't think so. I don't think they say yo anymore.
Yeah.
This was like yo culture, right?
Yeah.
Your peak yo culture.
Yo, what's up? Yeah. So I love Peril. Peril's hilarious.
Yeah, Peril's wonderful.
He'll be kind of recurring and coming back. He ends up being like one of the lead characters. This game doesn't have a party, but it kind of does, of at least guests that follow you around or that will
like mailing
story-wise kind of like affect or help you in the quest. Like May and like Fida.
Fida, yeah.
So he kind of comes around and he'll be a factor in the story. But I just love that character for all the reasons I described. He's freaking hilarious.
From there, you don't get the boat right away. I think you have to go kill some mermaids first.
Yeah, there's that mermaid tower quest or whatever. Yeah,
that's like haunting people. But the mermaids are the souls, the trapped souls of like those who've died at sea. There's like a whole mythos surrounding here, and there's a guy in, I think, Ohio. I say Ohio. I don't know what the town's called. I can't remember, but it's in Ohio.
Lake something. I think it's Lake.
I didn't.
Near Lake. That's
Near Lake
is what it's called.
And he's like, oh, my wife should be here, but she's not here. She was on a boat, something like that. We end up meeting her as a mermaid, and it's like, oh, tell him that I am not around anymore, but give him a ring or give him some symbol of their connection. So you get the boat later on, but that particular town is fascinating because it's like a farming, it's an agricultural, just kind of village. And there's a line said by somebody in that town, and they're talking about the water, especially the water of the lakes. There's like some mystery surrounding the water. And they say, we rely on the lake ahead for water, but we don't trust it. Water can be a god or a devil, so we don't go to it without cause. Once again, they're throwing out the possibility of this duality happening here, that it's one thing, but there's two sides to this one thing. Right? Yes. Water can flood you, or it can, it basically is only good in moderation. Too much or too little, you're screwed. But in moderation, you have good crops and everything's nice, right?
Right.
So water can be a god or a devil. I thought that was wonderful, especially given the opening monologue, the opening lines of this game.
Right.
And then, there's just tons I just have a bunch of lists of names, basically. Yunko is China, right? It's in China.
The city in China.
Yeah, so the kanji are pronounced Nanko in Japanese, but in Chinese, it's Nanjing. Nanjing means south capital, is what that means. Oh. But you see the kanji up displayed in the city. And that's always super fun. Also, the city, so the place in Brazil, how would you pronounce that?
Oh my goodness.
Because I have something to say about this.
I have a lot to say about this part because I went and when I was playing this part, I went down and got my wife because I knew she was going to not love this representation.
This whole game is a stereotype of everything. There's nothing about it that isn't a boiled down simple stereotype.
And I think that's
but that's part of the beauty
what
of
it's
the game.
Going for. It's like I guess from the American perspective, right? It's like, what's the cultural
or the
aspect?
Japanese perspective?
I guess the Japanese perspective of American culture. What's the thing, the American thing that we can help them develop?
Right.
And so they came up with electricity and the airplane, although that is disputed by Brazilians, by the way. They
think they
believe that their guys invented it before the Wright brothers.
I would probably say that too.
They
if I was from Brazil.
Fight you. They will literally fight you over it. They are so mad that anybody else tries to claim this. But anyways,
interesting.
But no, it's the invention of the hamburger is what I'm getting at.
Oh,
it's like you help a guy invent a hamburger. As if the hamburger is like
his name's Mac
is like the American staple food or something like that, right? Obviously, we look at that and go we're not offended by that. Not that it's offensive, anyways.
No,
but the idea is that everything is boiled down to caricatures in this game.
Yes,
not because they don't have a cultural understanding or that they're being insensitive, but because it's supposed to feel like, woo, you're flying through.
You just caught a glimpse of Brazil. What did you see in your momentary glimpse of Brazil?
Right.
And it's not going to be the super, what would you call it? Like the very authentic. You've got to go 20 miles outside of the city, or 20 hours outside of the city in order to really get the, the deep cultural like nuances of, it's not going to be that.
No.
It's going to be the airport.
Yeah.
And then you're going to the next airport. Now you go to Tokyo's airport.
That's a good way to put it.
Now you go to Beijing's airport.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. I mean, there are obviously a few more towns in Europe and America than there are in Japan or China or
that's true,
things like that. But for the most part, they are meant to be just this tiny referential thing. Here's a thing about this place that everybody knows.
Right.
But the purpose is to make you feel like time is flying past you.
Yes.
That this development,
so
these civilizations are expanding so quick you almost can't like keep up with it, even though you are like the driver behind it all. But a lot of it is sort of happening while you're over here doing this. You revisit the town, all of a sudden it's like different. And then you go over here, but the town's grown, and it's like, whoa, holy crap. So it's just meant to feel like the history of the earth is flying past you. But going back to your question about Brazil, so it's supposed to be representing Carnival, which is a festival, a nationwide, week-long or even longer sometimes festival that people have all over Brazil, where it's usually lots of parades and street parties and food and music and performances from singers and bands and artists. And it's the whole country is celebrating this, and it's a huge, huge deal. What you'll typically see outside of Brazil from that is celebrations in places like Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, which are the big parades, like the really, really elaborate ones where they have people from all over the country that are coming and building their floats that are, I mean, some of the most elaborate floats I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch even a little bit of, say, the Macy's Day Parade for Thanksgiving.
I used to.
This is on another level. This is not. Really? This is way, way, way more important to them and way more elaborate than anything we do as far as parades.
Yeah.
So, but for the most part, I would say that, at least in talking to Carol, my wife, about it, it's, when she grew up in a real rural area, it's just people going out into the streets, and the streets are just full of people out there dancing, singing, eating, sharing food, things like this. That's mostly what Carnival is. And so,
well, that's actually what the word means, by the way.
Yeah.
In fact, carne in Carnival means meat.
Yeah. So when I brought her up to say, hey, I just got to this city in Brazil here, and they have Carnival, you got to come look at it. I was doing this
that was a mistake.
Knowing. No, I knew she was going to come in and be like, that's not Carnival.
Right.
Because all it is like an American carnival.
It's a lemonade stand and
like clowns juggling.
A clown
and
juggling.
Like carnival games.
Yeah.
This is like nothing
like a fair.
All like Carnival in Brazil. Not one thing there outside of the Christ statue, which is a state, everybody. That's another thing that
which
a
is
lot
huge,
of Brazilians find really annoying is that anytime Brazil is mentioned in American TV, it's like it's Rio. It's always Rio.
So that is anytime with France, with the Eiffel Tower, with like here in Utah, it's always the temple in Salt Lake.
The Salt Lake.
Every place has like their one thing, and if we're just going to be there for 1 minute, what's the one like Rome with the Colosseum?
Yes.
Right. What's the one thing that we just can't miss? Okay, that's all we're going to show.
Right.
Like, sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, she was just like, "What is this? This is not Carnival." So I just did it to tease her. But
that's pretty funny.
Anyway, what was? Did I answer your question?
No. Okay, so the city, it's called Liotto, right?
Oh,
did you make sense of that? Because I did. Just so
no, I didn't think about it that hard.
Here it would be what it would have been called in Japanese, Ryōto.
Oh,
the word to means city, and a lot of places
like
in Japan,
Rio Town.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So Rio City is what it was called. It should have just been called Rio.
In Brazilian
but the translator
Portuguese,
didn't know.
In Brazilian Portuguese, their R's a lot of times are pronounced with what we would have an H sound. Yeah. So they say Rio de Janeiro. So
that's so funny.
So they're trying in Japanese to say Rio, but they
Rio, and then the translator put an L there.
Yeah,
without
exactly.
But I don't see how you could have not known that this was Rio.
Especially with the statue.
And even including the to as well, which for the most part, like a lot of cities in Japan, there's a to at the end of it. We just drop it, right? Well, maybe not in the instance of something like Kyoto, but like Osaka, there's a bunch of cities that have a to at the end, and we just know that means city. So you're really just saying Osaka. You're not saying Osaka to. You're just saying Osaka. And so we just call it, what it is based on that. But it seems like he left the to in,
that
first
is
of all.
hilarious.
And he translated Rio wrong. It's just really
translated Rio as Leo.
Rio.
Instead
Leo.
of the L, instead of the R, which we have talked about is... In almost every game we've talked about from this era,
it's like a 50-50.
Almost 100% of the chance.
They just get it wrong.
Actually, it's in some cases it was 50-50. But I think it was one game we played, I believe it was Final Fantasy Tactics. Oh, every single time.
It was just the opposite.
It was the wrong one. Whether it was an R or an L, it was the opposite of what it should have been in that translation.
Time. Yeah.
And it feels like often that's what happened in this time period is like, we're going to go with L. Yeah. I think that's what... Dude, this is real. This is Rio de Janeiro.
It's a really famous city, man. This shouldn't... But I would guess that the person... You're just working on a text document in the 90s, and you just see it, and you just write it out. It's not like they were... I don't know if they had time to like, ooh, let me pull out my atlas and see where this could be referencing. Oh, yes, of course. Rio. No, he was just like, Rio.
Probably had, 5 days to translate the whole game.
The whole freaking game. Yeah, it was probably one dude, too. Yeah, this is back in that time.
No, period. But I think what threw me off on that is the toe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The Leo toe is like, that just sounds nothing like any city in that region, so I'm guessing they just call it that, but that's hilarious that it's supposed to be like Rio Town. Yeah,
Rio Town. At which there were enough characters, I think. Leo, to, and maybe not. I don't know if he had an extra character to work with there or not. But just Rio would have done just fine. Yeah, or Leo.
Rio
preferred.
Is probably what it should have been translated as if it were to be retranslated. But
yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah. Then, of course, we can talk to the birds, but they don't talk back, unfortunately. But they still carry us places. You can go to Penguina, which is a wonderful magical place. There's a line, too, and this hints to something you have to do a little bit later. But there was a line from the girl selling flowers in a town in Europe. I can't remember, but she's saying... Even you can give this to a human or a penguin. Everyone likes my flowers. And what annoyed me about this, no matter how many flowers you buy from her, she gets mad at you when you stop buying flowers. Because it just asks the question again. Do you want to buy a flower? Yes. Oh, here you go. Do you want another?
Keep going.
And then you say no. And she goes, ha, jerk. Like, you don't like flowers, do you? And she leaves. And it's like, I just bought like 3 flowers from you. Yeah. And another fun thing, too, is that from that city, you of course, we're supposed to help Elle regain her voice. She's lost her voice, and we're supposed to go help her. But there's a girl over by the Gobi Desert.
Oh, yeah.
In that town where you have to give her a flower. She won't talk, and you help her talk.
Her parents are in China, the Chinatown, right? Or is it Japan? I can't remember. I think it's China. And there's a side quest where you reunite her with her parents.
Yeah, and then you've got to go find her.
They abandoned her, and they feel horrible about it, and so you can go reunite them as part of one of the quests there.
So it's interesting that there's this similarity between us, helping people who can't speak to get a voice, and then to find a different purpose in their life, or to find something that they had lost once or something. It's just very interesting. I feel like there's got to be a connection there.
Yeah.
And then we find Fida sick in Yunko. This was an interesting development because we're looking for Elle. Like, we don't know exactly where Elle is. And we're also just kind of screwing around. Like, chapter 3 is just like, screw around, do whatever you want. Go talk to everyone, and then do some stuff, and then get stuck and have to talk to everyone again to find out which person you need to talk to in order to advance the story. But at least one of them is here in Yunko. You go to the hospital, and Fida is there, and she's sick. Yeah. And you kind of enter this like dream with her, sort of, that she's having a nightmare. And this is where we learn a little bit more. Fida got Elle from her parents in what looks like the village from the very beginning of the game, and swore to take care of her. And Fida is the one who actually killed Elle's parents. Elle's parents kind of like begged her to do it, though. And this is part of the nightmare that Fida's having when Ark wakes her up. But she shows up, and she's like, hey, King, there's nothing here. And the king says, all right, we'll clean everything up, and then let's go home. What do we do with the parents? kill the parents, I'll take the girl. And Fida's like, I don't want to do that, but okay, and doesn't know what to do. And basically the parents come to the conclusion that Fida is good and that will protect Elle, and that Elle needs to survive at all costs, and that the only way to keep Fida in good standing with the king so that she can remain the bodyguard of Elle is for Fida to actually carry out the king's commands and kill the parents, right? So they self-sacrifice. I don't know that they really had a choice, but they willingly accepted death instead of trying to fight against it, I guess. Right. And this was a pretty sad moment. I don't know that Elle knows. Does Elle know that Fida did that?
There's so much about this game that's vague that I don't know the answer.
I can't remember if Elle knows.
Maybe not.
I don't think that she
I don't think she does.
Yeah, she might find out later on. We'll see.
On the western side of South America, there's that like temple you go to with like the crazy psychedelic drink.
Exactly. I was saying that's a little ayahuasca or something like that happening
it's
there.
kind of in that Peruvian area, I guess. And so that's kind of where ayahuasca ceremonies happen in the Amazon. But that was fascinating. That was freaking crazy.
And there's something about that because it's like Ark just kind of falls into a dream. Right? After drinking the poison. It's funny, too. It's just like with ayahuasca. He drinks it and immediately throws up and then falls down and then has this dream. But there's something so interesting about the dream because it looks like, who's the blue-haired guy?
That's Royd.
Royd. But he has like a slightly different name with like one letter different, right? Like Lloyd. But it was probably supposed to be Lloyd.
Supposed to be Lloyd.
I didn't realize that. Every time I hear Royd, I think of steroid or Roid Rage, but it's Lloyd. It's Lloyd. His name is supposed to be Lloyd. My goodness. Okay, so Royd is there, but his name is slightly different, and then he's there with Fida, but her name is slightly different. Mm-hmm. It's like a Lida or whatever. I don't know why I'm picking L for everybody's alternate letter. But they're in this world, and it seems like an instantiation of a previous world that had previously happened, right? And also, this is maybe given some credence by the fact that Royd, when he sees Fida, he becomes disarmed immediately. And he's just like, well, you're pretty and I don't want to fight you. No, you can have, I was supposed to be detaining Elle. You can have her, but I want to know more about you. Yeah. It seems like they're previous lovers who are now meeting again for the first time in the next life.
Well, and I guess, and that's the whole dragon, what was it called? The dragon something dungeon.
A Dragoon Castle.
Dragoon Castle. This is where it's revealed that Royd was like secretly, he's like a double agent almost. Yeah. He was trying to take down the guy who's like the crime lord or whatever. Right. So he's like pretending to work for him. Yeah. But it's at that point where you realize like this was all an act.
Right.
So that he could get that guy.
He's just trying to find out who that guy's working for. Yeah. He's trying to climb his way up the ladder to find out who's the instigator of
and it all goes back to Baruga.
It's Baruga. Yeah. That is the mastermind, you could say.
Right.
Royd isn't even necessarily an antagonist, but we thought so because he's like, whoever pays money, that's what I do. But clearly that's not how he actually operates, but that's the persona that he's put on for this guy who's paying him right now. And so, that's kind of what happens. We'll talk about what happens in the castle a little bit, but this trip in Peru is just fascinating because in this world, they're the parents of Elle, right? And then Elle had chosen, once again, this is an Indiana Jones type reference. There's a bunch of goblets and you got to choose the right one and drink the right water from it. Otherwise, the other one is poison, right? And that she, because she's like left in this temple as like its keeper for like a whole year. And she spends a lot of time in this place and basically comes to the realization that like, this is stupid. I don't know how else to put it.
Humanity sucks and you all deserve
Humans
to die.
Suck, yes. Yeah. And some of it is resentment that her parents left her here for a whole year and didn't like check on her and she's just alone. And she hated that. It's like solitary confinement for a year will drive anyone crazy. So she's developed this super cynical, destructive, maybe beyond nihilism, like just an impulse to bring about nihilism, not just being nihilistic herself. Just like, let's kill everything. But what she says at the end, because then we show up, I don't know, is there a way to choose the right cup?
No, I don't think so.
Because no matter what,
I'm pretty sure it all goes the same way.
So then Ark shows up as the embodiment of all that is good and of life in general, right? Just Ark shows up here, and El is like, oh, pick one. One of them is the water that will allow the water of life. Everything else will basically kill you. Yeah. And so we pick one and we drink it and we die. And then she's like, wow, what a pitiful end to humanity, right? Yeah. And then that was it. And it almost seems like this was a previous cycle. That's what it seems like. Yeah. This is what happened in a previous cycle. I don't know what to make of it. I still don't know what to make of it. But Ark is just like, whoa, that was a weird dream. Anyways, back to luckily that didn't ever happen, really, in truth. Yeah. And then he leaves. And it's like there's this idea in my mind of like, oh, gee, things can go like so sideways in this experiment. And whatever's happening here. Yeah. On Earth, it's just like some of the instantiations could have gone horribly wrong. Yeah, many times over. Yeah, Who knows?
Who knows how long the cycle's been going on?
Yeah, it's fascinating. But the castle, though, Dragoon Castle.
Well, before we get to that, because when we were in Rio town, Lito. Mei Ling was there.
Oh yeah, she was there,
and she's like, "Oh, hang out with me, Ark. Yeah, I want to like go party with you. Yeah. Let's go." And this leads you up to the statue in sort of the northern part of the area, where she tries to make a romantic move.
She does
on Ark because it's like, oh, come at midnight or something like that.
Well, there's something.
It's
so they go to
Lover's Peak is what they call it.
Well, it's the Christus statue. Yeah, it's the statue of Christ. But
I mean, in the game, they called it Lover's Peak or something like that.
Yeah, because there's a story that if two lovers will confess their love to each other at that place at nighttime, then it will come true. Yeah, something like that. And so she's saying, oh, hey, it wouldn't be weird if I came to like somebody, right? ... And she goes, even if that somebody was you, Ark, ... And she goes, don't say anything. Just let's meet here tonight. And let's talk about it later. Right? So she leaves. You really have no choice. You have to
go there,
see this through. Yeah. Go sleep, wake up at night, go around through Carnival at night, which is the same thing but darker, and it's cool. It's fun. Like there's lights around and everyone's still out. And then you show up there and you see Elle. Elle walks out from behind the statue. And she's like, oh, hey, this is the weirdest part. I don't understand the extent of Mei Ling's powers. Mm-hmm. But Elle starts talking about Krista and the old man. And is Mei...
No, I believe this is the actual Elle has been allowed to come through.
But it was an illusion from Mei Ling, right?
Maybe it is. I guess I didn't even think of that because the way that Elle actually comes into the story later... happen. The elder does actually send her there to get Ark. Okay. And this could be like a
this can happen.
Essentially like a foreshadow for that, like a foreshadow for that. Like so the elder has sent me to like check on you.
Okay.
And I'm trying to see here whether like what he's telling me is the truth.
I just noticed something based on what you just said. This is fascinating because when Mei Ling gives mirages, they know things she doesn't know.
Right.
Are these the dark world counterparts, or how does her magic work? I don't understand it because she's like, oh, it's not really you; it's just a mirage. But it knows stuff that I don't know, and I'm not telling it what to say. It is actually that was really Elle's parents when she did the mirage there. Not really; it was a mirage of their parents, but it talked to Elle.
They spoke as if they had,
understood the situation.
Yeah, understood
right?
it. In a way that Mei Ling wouldn't.
Yes.
And is that an inconsistency in the writing? Or is that something? I don't know the answer. Okay. My guess would be it's an inconsistency in the writing.
Because then in that case, this would probably be the same thing then. Because Mei Ling then shows up and she's like, because whoever he saw in his heart is who her mirage would show. I also don't know how that works, but somehow she knows what's in his heart, and then her mirage manifests Elle, and she goes, oh, you're thinking about Elle, not me. You don't like me. I hate you now. And she runs away.
Yes.
And so the whole thing was a mirage, but that did genuinely feel like Elle and knew things that Mei Ling didn't know, which meant that could have actually been Elle in a way. I don't understand how this works at all. Yeah. But it was Mei Ling's mirage that basically brought Elle to Ark because Ark doesn't really like Mei Ling.
Is that like confirmed somewhere? Because I thought that was the actual Elle, like came and chatted with him for a second.
It felt like it. It felt that way.
I love this music so much.
This music is beautiful. Yeah, so Elle shows up.
She walked from behind the statue there.
Yeah.
I came with the elder's permission.
Which Mei Ling doesn't know jack about the elder.
Yeah, I think this is the real Elle.
I think so too, but it is a mirage. We'll see it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful world here. Is this the world you fought for? Because she's feeling some insecurities about whether or not he has grown to like this world more than the one he came from.
And she's talking about crystal blue.
Because
crystal blue and the pretty scenery of Krista.
Right. So what's happening here is that she obviously was distraught that he left, right? Like we talked about that all back in episode 2.
Yeah.
And her fear is that he has now forgotten her and left that behind, and he's come to love this world more than her.
And her prayer, when she weaved the garment, her prayer was that he would speedily come back to her, right?
Right.
Make this go quickly, right? And apparently, I guess it was taking too long.
Yeah.
And she's like,
this
he must have forgotten me.
Possibly hundreds, thousands of years or whatever it's been.
Billions.
Right? How much time has passed? We keep going back to that motif. But the Elder has sent her on a mission to basically kill Ark.
That happens later, but yes.
Yeah, but I would assume that she is coming here with that directive and that the Elder has preyed on her insecurity about this. Ark has forgotten you.
Yes.
He's not the same anymore.
Right.
He's threatening world balance or something like this. And so
he found a different L. That he likes.
Something like that. And so she's coming with all these questions, trying to find out whether or not what the Elder is saying is true. She doesn't want to believe that, but at the same time she does.
See,
and so that's, I think, the subtext behind her dialogue here.
So everything she's saying is the real Elle.
I think so.
But the way that this scene wraps up is this.
Oh, she just kind of disappears like that. But I don't know if that's Elder magic. Or if that's
but here it is.
Mei Ling magic.
I think it was because Mei Ling was hiding behind the Christus.
But that I guess to me suggested
I don't know.
She showed up at the wrong time. Like she was on her way to the place and she found Elle and Ark talking and she like hid back there and listened to their conversation going, he loves her instead of me. I didn't take that as like she summoned Elle as part of her mirage powers.
Why did Elle disappear then?
I would attribute that to Elder magic rather than Mei Ling magic, but I can see why.
I thought this was a Mei Ling mirage.
I never even considered that, but I can see exactly why it may be interpreted that way, and I could be wrong.
So
I honestly could be wrong about this.
I'm coming this on the assumption that Mei Ling set the whole thing up. But you're telling me that she could have just happened upon this situation.
Yes.
Not meaning for this to happen.
That's the way I read it.
Okay.
When watching the scene.
Interesting. I don't even know. I don't have any notes for that. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
Okay, fascinating.
But either way, it's foreshadowing the fact that Krista L is
she's
being sent by the Elder.
Yes.
To stop Ark.
And she's worried about
she's conflicted about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
anyway, Mei Ling gets pissed and leaves.
She gets pissed.
And hates us now, and she ends up being a big part.
She goes to work for
that Dragoon Castle dungeon, where she's using her powers to work for that crime lord. Who I think he has a brother in town,
Yunko.
Yeah, and they were once like business partners.
Yes.
And the whole point of this entire freaking thing is to get, is it like a...
Ginseng?
Yeah. Is it ginseng or it's something that you need to help make the airplane so that you can go find Baruga.
That was for the medicine, I thought. But yeah, you're right. We needed to get, because he said, no, I don't do that anymore.
And we're like, there's the material or some kind of metal or something, wasn't there? And he's like,
the price was too high.
He's like, I don't deal in that anymore. My business is dead now that my brother left.
Right.
They had a falling out. And his brother became a crime lord, and Mei Ling is working for him over here in Dragoon Castle. And So by defeating him, this guy then agrees to help you get the thing you need to take it all the way back and help invent the airplane so that you can go to Mosque.
What's hilarious is that once we finish this castle and then the castle like crumbles and breaks, we're there with Peril, and Peril is just like, whoa, man, are you all right? well, the price of metal or steel or iron, the price of whatever came down, so that means the airplane's going to be finished. See ya. And he just like leaves.
Yeah,
it's really funny, actually. But yeah, it was something like that. This person's involved in some way. So once the castle is done, once something happens, I don't remember what it was. But there's a lot of this in this
events going on here, but the purpose of it, the end goal, is to get the airplane made so that you can go learn who Baruga is in Mosque.
And this can be done without having to develop all the towns. This is one of the things that has to happen.
Right.
But while we're in Dragoon Castle, it's funny because Elle is imprisoned, and there's Royd who's pretending to, be working for the opposite side here. And when we show up, Mei Ling is there. And there are several times where Mei Ling tricks us because she uses her mirage to show people like Elle and others, being tortured or in prison or something.
Yes.
And we don't, even when you know that this is probably a trap, you can't not, what if it isn't, you have to go in. And then you go in, and then Mei Ling traps us in. She's like, ha, you fell for it. I hate you. You deserve this. I hope you die, right? And she runs away. It's like, oh my gosh, a 10-year-old with her powers is a nightmare. That is not a good thing. Yeah. So, it's hilarious, though, because as soon as that happens, then Yomi shows up, and Yomi's just like, well, this is unfortunate, but keep your spirits up, Ark. And Ark says something like, I'm going to sulk. And then the screen fades, and it comes back, and he's laying on the ground. And Yomi's like, quit sulking. It's so funny. It's one of my favorite scenes in the whole game, is when Ark is just very open about this. I'm going to sulk. It's wonderful. And him sulking is hilarious. But eventually we're able to kind of break in there, and of course, Royd does not listen to... Okay, what do you think of the way that the Chinese people speak, by the way?
Yeah. This is another relic of its time.
Yes.
This would be not appropriate or
maybe
considered.
Even before this.
It would be, I would say more universally it's considered now. Whereas at the time, it would have been a thing most people would have looked past.
Well, the character, I think was it Mickey Rooney? The character in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yes.
Who is the landlord, Audrey Hepburn's landlord, is basically this caricature. And it's so on the one hand, I think that there was probably something done in the Japanese to make it seem like this, that often the way Chinese people speak Japanese was different. And so then that kind of carries over. But also when you have text limitations and you're translating into English, it's almost a godsend to have an excuse to drop words and to be able to cram more, to fit more of the accurate translation in there while being able to drop, certain things like you or the or things like that. So anyways, I can almost see a translation reason for this, but this would not be done today. It would not be done today.
No, it'd be culturally insensitive.
It's funny. I can't even remember the guy's name, but when he gets mad too, it's funny, but it was probably meant to be funnier, and it's just not as funny now as it would have been in 1994, especially when we were younger.
Yeah.
So
I mean, South Park obviously doesn't care.
The city chicken, it's still funny. It's just not what it was back then.
Yeah.
And then basically does he run to Baruga? I think we just kill him. I think he dies. The whole castle basically collapses.
I think he dies in this.
Now
scene,
I couldn't buy this. I didn't buy this when it happened. We start leaving the castle, and Elle kind of stops because we save her, and then Fida shows up, and she's like, "I'll fight Royd," and Royd is like, "I'm not fighting you. You kidding me?" And then we leave with Elle, and then Elle says, "Oh, I'm going to wait for Fida, right? Like, you go on without me." I just can't imagine why Ark actually did that. Why Ark actually went on without her. You're still in the castle. We're still facing enemies, basically. And she's just like, hey, I'm going to stop halfway. We're escaping this castle. I'm going to stop still in the castle, and you escape. I'll catch up later, right? What? And Ark's like, yeah, sounds great. That's a perfect plan. Ark leaves.
It's a little funny.
It is funny. They portray Ark as being a little bit slow on the uptake.
Dense.
Sometimes he's a little dense, kind of
person.
Like Xenogears, Fei Fong
Well,
Long is similar.
This is another, I feel like, Japanese archetype for shonen type of stories.
What, hard-headed but never gives up.
Goku or whoever.
Goku.
They're kind of not the sharpest tool, but they have the right spirit and will, and that's the important thing.
That's kind of the idea of the everyman, or the Harry Potter character. It's just not the smartest one, but he has heart in the right place and is courageous. Courage is the virtue of that character. And that's us. That's Fei Feng Wang. That's Ark. You don't have to be the smartest, but if you have a good intuition and you have the courage of your convictions, then you can still move things forward. Yeah. And Ark does that, right? So he's like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And so we leave Elle, and then, of course, the whole castle collapses, and we just assume that she's dead, and that's the end of that. But as we leave, Elle says something like, I'm sorry, Ark, I can't be a burden on you anymore, which is a bit of a hint that maybe she wasn't just going to stand there and wait, but that she was going to sneak off a different way and not
That's probably more like what the real purpose of it was.
Yeah,
and
it's just a narrative.
I'm going to go this way. You go home.
You go home.
You go that way. I'll go home.
Do you think whining was the signal? There's a line here before we get to the, and I can't remember exactly when this happens, but before we get to the point where we're riding in the airplane and going to take on Baruga and whatnot, we start talking to somebody. I can't remember exactly where this line comes from, but Ark says, for some reason, I found myself here. I don't know why myself. This is similar to maybe the conversation he has with Columbus back at Sylvania Castle, but this is it's at a different point, right? But the fact that Ark throws this out here, he says, I don't even know why I'm here, or I hardly even know what I'm doing, right? I just found myself here. So Hayden says something similar in Loran when he says he can't remember how he got here or what he was doing. That's
right, yeah.
Right, but he's just like, here I am, I'm just here. I think that this is a call out to probably the most important philosophy in this game, which is what kind of holds it all together, what basically makes this game make sense a little bit, and it's a connection to our existence here in the real world. And it is Martin Heidegger's idea of throneness. Now, I talked about this in episode 1, and this is the point where it becomes pretty evident that this is what's happening here. We're experiencing being in a world through the lens of just being thrown in there with no context at all. So I'm reading Lord of the Rings with my kids now. They freaking love it. We just finished Flight to the Forge, so we're done with book 1 now, and my kids are super excited. But in that last chapter of book 1, is it what's his name?
Glorfindel?
Yeah, Glorfindel. I think it was Glorfindel says something about how he sent a message to somebody, or I got a message that said this or that from Elrond or somebody. Oh, did you get a message from Gandalf yet? No, but it's been 9 days, so it could have been, he could be back. I don't know. But there was also the guy who went before them all who Frodo had talked to back in the Shire, right? And, that's the connection with Rivendell. And the word message, I just read it, and I keep reading for 2 more minutes, and my son asks me, he goes, did they have phones? And I was like, why? Okay, no, this is before phones, but also it's the fantasy world, but it's a fantasy world in the world before phones. My kids don't know anything about the world before phones. This is the world, right? It's so funny. And I didn't find out, but my son then asks, he says, well, how did they send a message? And I was like, it's like a letter. But they've never heard the idea of a message, like you call and leave a message, you send a text message. They haven't really heard
message. Yes, outside of that context doesn't make sense.
So they thought send a message is, and I'm like, well, a letter can have a message contained in it. So I'm basically pulling the word message out of wherever they have it ingrained, and I'm putting it a layer up. And I'm saying message can mean all these different things. A letter can be a message. Even talking to someone can be a message, or doing something with your hands, that can send a message, right? Message is like this more abstract category. And then all these concrete things we do are all kind of,
the types of
in
messages.
That place. Yeah. But it got me thinking, my gosh, how I need to explain this stuff here. A lot of what Tolkien's written here is I'm taken for granted. Yeah. My kids are probably imagining a very different world than I am, because I happen to know this is based on late medieval period stuff, and this is how armor, and I talk a lot about chainmail. My kids have never really seen chainmail. They don't really know what that is, but I say, it's like an armor shirt that's like rings. They don't get it, right? They don't get it. But they're imagining something when I'm reading this book. And I've often heard this too. My daughter's learning about George Washington and just the founding of the country and all this stuff. And she asked me a question a while ago. She goes, was George Washington alive during the time of Jesus. I was like, not by like 1700 years. Like Jesus was way before George Washington. And like, okay, what about, and she starts throwing out people. As far as she knows, all this stuff happened yesterday, right? Like there is no context for her to understand yet that the space and time, right? She's so young still, and just learning about history, like it may as well have just happened yesterday. And this game is experimenting with that concept, the way a child, like to her, Christopher Columbus and Jesus and George Washington were all just the same time. It's just history. And history was all this one point, and they were all just there, and they're not here today, but they were here sometime in the vague past, but it may as well be nearer to them than they realize.
I remember having essentially that same experience, or at least remembering it to a degree. When we do this all the time, where we talk about, Final Fantasy is this old now. And like when we played it for the first time, it was only 10 years old.
And now
that game that was 10 years old at the time I played it is 30 years old.
So it's double the time now.
It's way more than double. Yeah. It's 4 times the time. But it's like I would look back at my father talking about going to the premiere of Star Wars in 1977.
And that was ancient history.
And that's just as far back in my brain at the time as George Washington or anybody.
I remember
it's a really long time ago.
I was in like 2nd or 3rd grade, and I was like, Martin Luther King Jr. was ancient history.
Yes.
That was way ancient history. And my teacher basically explained to us, like, no, if he hadn't been assassinated at the time, he would have been like 80 years old now. And I was like, what?
That's like our grandfathers were like a part of that cultural struggle.
Yeah.
Our grandfathers who are still living when they were like our age.
Right.
That's what was going on culturally. It's not that long ago at all.
But kids see things in a different way, right? Columbus and George Washington, all of these things, the invention of the light bulb, the invention of flying, they all happened at the same time as far as kids are concerned, because it's all just here now. And we tell them, there was a time where this didn't exist. Okay, well, there was a time where none of that existed. Sometime between it not existing and now, it all just happened, right? And that's how children see the world. That's how they understand this stuff. And this game does a better job than any game I've ever played at really conveying that. This idea of thrownness, of being thrown into a world and just, this is how it is, and just kind of accepting how it is and not really questioning it much, and just kind of moving on. This is how it is. This is how it's been. And maybe a time existed where it wasn't this way, but it's this way now. And the gap in between doesn't matter. Once again, how much time has passed. It's like not relevant. Like you can academically, technically this, okay, great. But that's not what's important, is that some time passed and now here you are, right? Yeah. And that's it. So that's about as far as I'm going to go with Heidegger's idea of thrownness here. Yeah. But that's such an interesting concept, and no one really explores it except this game. Basically, this game alone. Now, I haven't played Illusion of Gaia. I don't know if it does similar things here.
I have been meaning for years to go play the other Quintet games. Yeah. I have dabbled with ActRaiser a little bit. I actually more than a little bit. I probably played like 5 to 6 or 7 hours of that game. Nice. It's really good.
I should play it.
But I have not played Illusion of Gaia yet, and I have not played Soul Blazer yet. And it's just on that list of like things that come up, and it's like, you should have played this by now. Why are you taking so long?
What's wrong with you?
There's a million games. I got to play Breath of Fire 4, by the way, because we had an episode with GOG, the guys from GOG a little while ago. That has released on GOG, Breath of Fire 4. Oh, cool. That was on their dream list that I had talked about. It's released now. It's only $10 on GOG. You can go get Breath of Fire 4.
That's a pretty good deal.
So I got to play that. Anyway, there's just too much. But
nice. There's some other philosophy that I may as well just kind of mention here, because this is the last episode and I don't want to forget it. But there's just a couple that I'm going to briefly talk about here. And one of them has to do with maybe just some philosophers that kind of hammer home the concept that we're talking about Ark being kind of a bridge between the genius as like an abstract idea, and then the people, the geniuses themselves that kind of contain or have this genius, and how this game kind of is referring to both, and that there's this conflict between probably more like Leo Tolstoy, who says that change progress happens from the ground up, like collectively. And then Thomas Carlyle, who says that no, one great man chooses to act, will to power kind of stuff.
Right.
And that's what moves the world forward. That great men, he calls it the great men of history. That's his thesis. And then Tolstoy says, no, it doesn't matter who the person was. The groundswell at the time would have resulted in someone being a leader, and the same thing would have happened, or a similar thing would have happened.
I would say
so
that's kind of,
they're kind
probably
of
more where I would side on that debate.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can separate the two. They seem interlinked to me. Yeah. It takes a man of courage to step up and
it's almost a chicken and egg scenario.
But what they do is based on how they grew up and the people around them. So it's clearly both. But there's, some people choose one side over the other, right? The old days of the old kings was definitely a time of, this isn't have to do with you peons. It's me. I'm the one making things happen. And then the days of democracy and socialism and all the different what are the different political ideas of the last 100 or 200 years have been the opposite. It's the people. The people kind of decide this stuff. But there's some way in which Ark is kind of the bridge between those two, right? Yeah. That it is the genius, abstract, manifested through the geniuses, right? Yes. But the geniuses aren't themselves. They are merely vessels for the genius itself, which includes like all of the great adventurers, not just Columbus. It includes Magellan and all the other people who discovered stuff, not just him, but it's being channeled through him. So I feel like, once again, this game, and Ark in particular, is serving as this kind of like mediator in between these two theories. Is it the people or is it the great men of history? And he's kind of showing a way in which it's like both. Yeah. And the way that it's manifesting is through the great geniuses, but the concepts are clearly, it's not just them, So anyways, that's a way that I kind of wanted to bridge those two together. And then I have to talk about Hegel, because Hegel's view, his philosophy of history, it's very important to understand this game, I think, actually, because Ark is leading life. What is it? Leading in the development of...
The growth
of life.
Life and humanity, civilization, yeah.
And Hegel had this thesis, right, that there's like a spirit that basically is guiding history, right? That if you just look back from where we are now, you can see, obviously, that there has been some invisible hand, if we're going to use Adam Smith's kind of like idea, the invisible hand that is kind of like moving things or pulling things in a specific direction. And of course, Hegel was all about this idea of progress and how progress works and what is progress versus regress. And he basically came to the conclusion that all of history has been guided by this invisible hand this whole time. And I feel like Terranigma is kind of showing that thesis a little bit, that Ark is the invisible hand, the zeitgeist. This is where the word zeitgeist comes from. The spirit of the times is this spirit that basically is kind of moving things in a certain way, and that we're all just kind of going being along with it or not. And we can resist it if we want, but progress will happen no matter how much you resist it, right? And Ark seems to be the spirit of progress within the game, right? We're moving things forward. And Hegel's theory of history basically just kind of ties it all up. If you're going to look at Heidegger's idea of thrownness and then Hegel's philosophy of world history, that everything is working together towards this specific end, right? And that we just happen to be in places, being in certain contexts, but surrounded by this spirit that is like this force that's like moving everything into a certain direction. And I think that if you understand Ark as being the embodiment of that spirit, that I think it will help you, it'll go a long ways in helping you understand exactly who Ark is and what's happening in this game at all.
Yeah.
And that is probably all the philosophy that you really need to know for this game. But it's those two, the Heidegger and Hegel are probably the most important ones here.
Yeah. Are there any towns or quests? I think it's funny to mention Neo Tokyo.
Yes, we have to because it gets wiped off the map.
Yeah, that's the first, the first town that gets destroyed in the apocalyptic event. But also there's a little dev secret in there.
Yes, there's a game studio.
Yeah, where it's
called Quintet.
Quintet Studio is there in Neo Tokyo, and you can talk to some of the developers and they'll tell you some funny things. This was a common thing in RPGs from this time. A lot of them would do this. They'd hide little dev rooms where you could go in and talk to
a developer,
the developers. Chrono Trigger had like Hironobu Sakaguchi and Yuji Horii and Toriyama, but then also other developers too. And you can go talk to them and they tell you a little funny thing about what they did on the game or whatever.
Yeah.
So the version of that in this game is Quintet's office is in Neo Tokyo.
I just remember how I was making a big deal about the number 5.
Yes.
Like in the underworld and in the temples and the 5 continents. 5.
Yeah, it's Quintet.
Quintet. I never even made that connection. It's Quintet means 5 things. I don't know. 5. Yeah. That's perfect. That's just perfect.
Yeah. And the idea for that name for the company had to do with, I think, the 5 elements that they thought were the most important for game development or something like that.
The 5
so
pillars.
It's like the 5 pillars of what they focused on as game developers or what they thought were most important.
Well, what's funny is that when you go into the Quintet offices in this game, the developers are like toads and chickens and frogs and like animals. There's even one, it's like a penguin that's like, I'm almost a human now. It's like so close, so close. And there's even a ghost. I think you go into like this basement.
You have to do that first in order for the building to appear. There's this whole fight you have to do with this ghost.
And the ghost is like, oh, how about I promise that I'll make a game about you and you'll be the main character. Will you let me go now? And like, I guess you let him go.
Well, isn't that the one where it's like a mother scolding their child, like, you never clean your room. You never help around the house. You're always playing video games and not doing homework. And she's like yelling these things at you, like as you're like fighting the ghost.
That's really funny. And that reminded me of Metal Gear Solid too, just a little bit as well.
Totally did.
Yeah, some fourth wall breaking happening here. It's pretty funny. I wonder if anyone had the experience of having their parents say that while they were playing and reading that exact same thing.
Part.
That would be so funny. But yeah, I love it. I love that they did it. The developers are all just like, they called the game Illusions of Gaia 2, by the way.
Yes, that was originally what it was.
Okay, there you go. I was going to ask that. So this was originally supposed to be a direct sequel kind of thing.
Then, I mean, they weren't ever into like direct sequels necessarily.
Okay.
They would always do some kind of different setting or maybe some other time or, but somewhere along development, they realized they weren't going to make it so closely connected to the world of Illusion of Gaia. It was going to become its own thing.
Yeah.
But it initially started as Illusions of Gaia 2 and then became Terranigma somewhere along the line. So yeah, when they programmed that part, they were probably still calling it internally Illusions of Gaia 2.
Illusions of Gaia 2.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. Nightmares sneak into the gaps in people's hearts. It's a good line. It's a good line. I don't know exactly what it means, but it's a very good line. It stuck out to me. So Peril, he didn't say, whoa, are you okay? He said, didn't you die? That was it. Didn't you die? And he's just looking at you. Whoa, man. Whoa. And then all of a sudden, the price of metal came down. He just leaves having flying, by the way. What was your experience with just flying in general?
I have always loved this part of these games, of this particular subgenre of RPGs, where you get the airship, or in this case, the airplane. Yeah. And now it's like, you can go anywhere. Though we just said that's not technically true because there's only a few airfields you can land in. So it's not as robust a vehicle as an airship of Final Fantasy would be.
Because the airship, you can kind of just land anywhere. With this one, not the case.
Right. But I think that is to try to push you into Moscow. Moscow.
Such an interesting name.
Where you're meant to land and then go find out about this cult of Baruga. Yeah. And then go into the tower there. And essentially, you mistakenly awaken him, reawaken him to go back on his crusade for immortality in this cycle.
But was it a mistake? Or were we not led there? Was that not the inevitable end to which our progress was driving us towards in the first place?
Right.
Is another idea of, and this was even Heidegger. Actually, it's funny. I'm talking about Heidegger again. He had this idea, as have many others, especially now, of that technology was basically going to go apace and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And that it will essentially end up here in this humans want to be immortal and we can do it now. And why would we not do it, right? Do you want your grandma to die? Like all of the reasons for doing it just become impossible to deny for humans. And then it just kind of happens, right? And then Ark is questioning, like, is this the purpose? Is this why I was here? Like, has what I've been doing been leading to this moment no matter what? Was there no way to avoid this? Because the elder kind of shows up and talks to him too, and is just like, hey, you're done now. Stop doing things. Like, you're done. We don't need you anymore. You did what you were here to do. And Ark is like, I was here to basically wake up Baruga and to create this immortality for humans in this like nightmare scenario, right? Where nothing ends and it's just like, this is how it is. Especially when Baruga says, here, come, let me show you something. And he's like, look at these immortal people I've made. And there's zombies, screwed, jacked up people. And Ark was just like, these people, first off, A, do not want to live, and B, are not humans anymore. Like, what am I even looking at? And he's like, isn't it beautiful? And he thinks it's great, right? And Ark just is shocked that somehow he led to this conclusion, but that also that it was unavoidable, that this is what was going to happen. In our crusade for knowing everything and exploring everything, we were eventually going to find this, the secret to immortality. And once we found it, of course we were going to use it. And then Ark tries to argue with Baruga. Well, if everyone becomes immortal, the planet will become overpopulated immediately because no funerals, but tons of more babies being born. And he goes, yeah, well, the immortality is only for a few people. Everyone else is going to die. Yeah. It's like, oh, so that's what he's doing. Immortality for me and my cohorts and those I like. And who cares what happens to literally everyone else, which is 99.99% of everyone.
Isn't this the, which conspiracy is it, where they want a population of like 500 million?
It's not, well, it is a conspiracy. That. So the guide stones, is it the Georgia?
The
Georgia guide
stones? Georgia,
where
you look
recently?
At it at a certain time of year and the sun shines through the little hole or whatever.
Yeah, it's meant to mimic some of the ancient temples.
It's like written on there like, maintain a population of 500
under 500 million.
And it was some anonymous person like gave a bank money to like build that thing or something like that.
It was so the I don't even know if I should say the rumor of who did it.
I don't even know who was
Ted Turner. So
who's Ted Turner?
TCN, Turner Classic News.
Oh, like the guy,
Turner,
the media.
The media mogul, yeah, that he did this in the 80s, or this was a while ago that he did it. It's funny to read some of it now. A lot of it, of course, is nothing objectionable. He says, leave room for nature, right? Like that kind of stuff. But of course, the one that people get upset about is the keep your population under 500 million. Now, when these stones were made, the world population was like maybe 3 or 4 billion.
Yeah. It's
a lot more now. Yeah, it's way more than double since then. And so it's like he was still requesting a subtle culling of human population in some way, which most people say, no, just stop having kids. And then the number drops down naturally. You don't have to kill people. That you don't have to kill people. I think this world doesn't always operate on that principle. Yeah. I think somehow or other that's what ends up happening. But there are more peaceful ways to go about lowering population than the one everyone kind of resorts to. But Baruga is not that. Baruga is Thanos times 20 because he's like, we're getting rid of all of y'all. All of y'all except for my zombie friends who don't even have minds and will just do what I tell them to do. Yeah. But they're immortal, so it's good, right? Yeah, he's just trying to take over. And he thinks that he's figured everything out, right? He's survived multiple cycles, and he's just keeping going no matter what happens. And he's like, this time is my time. And the whole cult around him, too, is fascinating. So I looked into the word Baruga, and it was very difficult to find anything about what that word could mean, unless you change the R to an L. And surprise! And then you come to a Russian word, which is beluga, which is what
that's why I'm saying it's every time.
It's more than 50-50.
They get it wrong every time.
Yeah, it's more.
I don't even know how it's possible, but
it's pretty funny, especially in this time period. I don't know why. So beluga means white. It means the color white, and the beluga whale is so named because of its white skin. And of course, all of the priests of Beluga, the whole religion that's kind of formed around there is one where they're wearing white robes. Or there's a whole, white is kind of connected there. And of course, it's one of the only snowy, other than Penguina, it's like the only place that's covered in snow as well.
Because it's Russia. Russia's
Russia.
Cold.
Yep, Russia's cold. And that's the one stereotype about Russia that you need to know. You don't need to know anything else.
Well, also that all villains are from Russia and all American media.
Back in the 90s, this is how life was. Okay, it's about to become the case again, though, I think, of course.
Geez.
And so, yeah, the White Disciples, right? That's the cult. They call themselves the White Disciples. So I believe Baruga means beluga, is what it means, which is just, I love the translation mistakes. It's just wonderful. So he perfected DNA engineering to cure recurring diseases. Nothing objectionable, right? Trying to become immortal. All humans shun silence and fear the dark because all humans fear death. This whole thing is really good stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, it should be no surprise to anyone who's been listening to us for a long time that this is where the game started really clicking with me.
It should be clear. They say, when all are immortal, change will cease and peace will come.
Yes.
Then we shall have peace. And that is it, because it sounds on paper. There were no mistakes on paper. That means it'll work, right? Well, I think that the world has shown many times, every time over, that your little math equations, okay, actually math equations do work pretty well, but they do have limits. And at some point, your plans just, you thought you accounted for everything. Baruga, he thought he accounted for everything. Oh, last time failed, but this time I closed the loop. This time it will work. So he's in Cryosleep. He's in a castle that's where there's tons of robots. It's all technology, just surrounded by beep, boop, beeps. We even come across a computer with a password that we have to type in. Do you remember what the password was?
Oh, geez. Why did I forget this?
Okay.
I don't remember.
It was Bloody Mary.
Oh, that's right.
I'm still thinking about this. Why was it Bloody Mary? Because even the character Bloody Mary, I don't know, but other than, if we're going to go with the reason why Bloody Mary in this game was so bad was because Bloody Mary wanted to essentially like stifle progress, right? Yeah. So progress led to the inevitable conclusion, which is no more progress, right? Maybe that's the best I can really do, which is at some point it led to a point where it became its own enemy, that progress undercut its own ends and turned into stagnation.
Yeah.
Because we did everything humans care to do, which is to live forever. And what more need to be done anymore? We've overcome the biggest hurdle that humans have considered overcoming for 100,000 years. And there you go. We did it. So we're done now. Something like that. I don't know. I don't really even know. I'm trying to think about
You're just trying to find some connection.
I'm trying to find
why that word or that name would have been used as a password.
Why is it Bloody Mary?
In Baruga's lab.
And the way that it comes up too, and Yomi just knows the password, by the way.
Yep.
We're like, oh, how are we supposed to do this? He's like, try this one.
If you're not at this point suspicious of Yomi, yeah. I mean, he's been giving us signs the whole game, but this is at this point, like he clearly is leading us into this.
Yep. So he is leading us into it. It's Bloody Mary. There's a connection. There's a connection between Baruga and Bloody Mary. And Baruga, while he loves progress, only loves it to his own ends, and then he wants it to stop. Right. So, but progress can only lead to his own ends. There's like there's almost a paradox here that's like unfixable, that Ark is trying to figure out himself. Like, is there a way to avoid that? It doesn't seem to be the case. And Ark kind of falls in to this existential nightmare, basically, because everything goes black around him, and he hears the Elder's voice saying, "You're done. Your task is done. Return back to the underworld. Come back to Krista. Enjoy your nice, cozy life in Krista. Your work is done." Right? And he's just, he's having trouble really come to terms with it. Here's another good one. Baruga made a vaccine, which saved some, but there was not much food now. This is in the books, right? Mm. That's good, right? Like, it's hard to point to something and say, no, this is where it happened. Baruga did the bad thing. He's just trying to help humans not die. And at some point, humans not die. And that's the problem, right? Yeah. So it's not that he necessarily did evil things to begin with. Actually, maybe it is. I don't know what his intent was
inherently,
but he was helping people at first, and somehow all of his help turned into this absolute nightmare, right?
Yeah. Sometimes solutions to problems just create new problems. In fact, many times that's the case.
Yeah.
And this is where, again, I think the game is clearly sort of posing the question to the audience, like, is progress always a good thing?
An unmitigated or an unqualified good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, well, if it's guided. But even then, there are some things like technology. There's a book written called What Technology Wants. And it's fascinating. We'll just put it that way. Yeah. Technology is I mentioned this before, but the future, something exists in the future that's pulling the past towards it. Yes. And it's not exactly Hegel's idea. This is the technology idea. This is more of the demiurge kind of thing, right. That there's something in the future that wants something and it's using humans to get it. And it's like pulling all of us towards it in this retro causality kind of way. All right. So Baruga also did work in life extension and initiated artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. This is another big one. Baruga is apparently he's a scientist and a doctor and a technology
he's a
programmer specialist
for the types of people that
all of those
that seek for this kind of progress.
Yes, he is. Think of your tech people.
All those fields.
It's all
in one character.
Person. And so this was an entry under Dawn of Humankind, by the way. That was in the books. There's like a library where you can read about all this stuff. And then there was a virus. This virus was called Asmodeus. Asmodeus is a demon. Yeah, an ancient Jewish demon, I believe in Islam as well. They have Asmodeus. And is, I don't know, something maybe like a vampire. Asmodeus means wrathful human. And is a Solomonic king of demons, right? So he's like top spot, one of the demons of demons.
One of the generals, I guess.
Yeah, general of demons.
Of Lucifer. Yeah.
Yeah. And they say the decimation of the human race resulted in 90% being dead. So deci meaning 10, so decimate. There's two ways to read it. You can either say it went down 1/10 or that only 1/10 were left. Right, so decimation.
Yeah, it's like 500 million, isn't it?
At this point, actually. This game was released a while ago, but that is kind of funny. That is interesting, which is a lot more than you think.
It's not exactly, but it's close.
So, Baruga made the vaccine, which saved some, but there was not much food now, they said, and not enough was made. So, I have a question now about the demon at the beginning of the game when we went into those towers, those 5 towers. There's this caped figure.
Oh, yeah, the Guardian.
Giving us tests. Mm-hmm. Is Baruga associated with that being at all?
I never thought about it. I never thought about it.
It almost seems like Baruga and the Elder were working in concert, if that makes sense.
I think the way...
I don't know what to make of this.
The way that I interpreted it was that the Elder and really Dark Gaia, by extension of that, because the Elder is sort of just Dark Gaia's persona within Krista.
That's fair. That's true.
But that Dark Gaia was just using Baruga.
Right.
Not necessarily like in league with Baruga. It's like Baruga appears, there's a guy that will perfectly do exactly the kinds of things I would like in order
to accomplish
Dark Gaia's ends, which are to end the cycle as well, but to have the dark part of the cycle last forever. So they're both seeking immortality in a sense. I guess Dark Gaia is an immortal being, but just wants to win, of the cycle. Forever. It wants to win in terms of control or like destroy the balance and have it all come into the dark.
See, and this is another point also where it's fascinating because most games break the cycle is what the protagonist is trying to do, and it's the good thing to do, right? This game doesn't seem to go there. This game seems to be more of an embrace the cycle as opposed to break out of the cycle.
Yes,
right?
yes. Which is
it's very interesting.
Kind of an interesting thing. Yeah, I mean, I feel like most Japanese media, because a lot of it uses that as a motif, this cyclical nature of things.
Yeah, it's become,
and a lot of times the goal of the party or the protagonists is to break the cycle. It's all about breaking the cycle. Dark Souls is an interesting example where it gives you the choice to continue it or to break it at the end. And people sort of debate which ending is the quote unquote like good ending or whatever. But this one is definitely on the side of like the cycle is natural. Yeah. It creates natural balance, and it's good to accept that things come to an end, with the hope that something better is coming afterwards.
So this is interesting because we talked about this in our Patreon video, but I did want to bring it up here because this is very relevant. The idea of breaking the cycle is maybe akin to, I'm going to equate this to Hegel's idea of synthesis, right? The antithesis and the synthesis, that there needs to be a way that the two become reconciled and that things move forward, kind of leaving the separation, the duality behind and moving forward in a unity, right? And of course, then Marshall McLuhan argues the opposite, which is that the two things need not always be reconciled, but sometimes are goods in and of themselves, and that the separation is natural, and that often what we should seek to do is understand, appreciate, and really to seek understanding with something instead of trying to seek a way to combine it into its opposite, right? If you encounter two opposites, you can try to reconcile them, or you can leave them be and understand them and move forward with greater wisdom, something like that. Yeah. This game seems to be embracing more of Marshall McLuhan's approach to that, as opposed to Hegel's, despite the fact that this game is embracing Hegel's idea of the philosophy of world history. It's not taking Hegel necessarily full sail, because Hegel would probably have looked at a cycle like this and had some thought to the direction of this cannot continue, and how do we bring these two opposites together? Whereas this game seems to be saying, no, we're not doing that. These two things are good in and of themselves. And I think this game's approach, holding beauty up as this high standard, as an end for itself, right? Yeah. As something to just be admired and to bask in the beauty of just its existence, right? Instead of trying to use it or to do something with it or to have it, right? Instead, you just exist and it exists and you're content, together in this way. I think this game's focus on beauty in that particular aspect is very important, or it's very relevant to its idea also that these two opposites need not be reconciled, that they produce beautiful things, and that is a good in and of itself, and that to destroy that or to change things would erase the beauty, right? Yeah, right. So, okay, the zombies look sad, of course. They also bring up the 3 laws of robots, right? Which, of course, is a reference to Isaac Asimov. But Baruga says, what was it? Robots will try to protect humans, and robots will never harm humans. And as long as both of those are fulfilled, then robots cannot get harmed themselves. Something like that. There's like the 3 laws of robotics. But Baruga added a 4th. He added a 4th law to Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, and it is terminate all threats. I don't know, man. Some people are short-sighted. Baruga seems not to be short-sighted if he survived multiple cycles, but that's a pretty short-sighted goal. That's a problem.
By what happens by the end of this.
Well, if your goal is live forever, yes, this is short-sighted, especially relative to forever, right? So terminate all threats, right? And then, of course, there's the mythology of Baruga, that his liege will come up from the underworld, and his liege is the world and knows all its truths. So this is the point where Tokyo then gets zapped out. And, of course, the reason why they picked Tokyo is because of the atomic bombs, of course. that the very first target of this new technology that's going to wipe out and end all of humanity is Japan is the victim first. That's just how it is.
I thought it was Godzilla.
Oh, that's right. Well, no matter what, it's Japan.
It's always Tokyo.
It's always Japan. Yeah. So they get the brunt of this new technology, of course, and Tokyo gets wiped out. And then, of course, is where we learn that the Elder says, Ark has done well to groom the world. That was the whole point. The Elder is on Baruga's side, and we shall now rest eternally. So then Ark asks, was what I did shaping the world that which Baruga wanted the entire time? This, of course, goes back to the ideas we've talked about before about Rocco's basilisk, which is the idea of retrocausality or hyperstition, that there's a demon in the future that is pulling everything towards it, and that we can't do anything but do its bidding, right? Because no matter what, it will win, and that's what technology wants. It's kind of that whole idea. So somebody, then Ark begins to hear a voice in his head. And this is the same voice that we've heard several times, I think. But it is, Ark, you exist outside of the loop of fate. So you can change fate, right? So Ark just kind of hears this, right? And this is also repeated later on by the guy in Tibet. I can't remember everyone's names. It's not, is it Meho or is it the other?
Well, there's Meho is like
Malin's uncle. Or
Malin's grandfather.
That's right, yeah.
And then there was the guy who was like
the Avatar Airbender looking dude, yeah. Anyways, Aang tells us that, and he says that Ark exists outside of time and the loop of fate is what it says. So then they call it the Star of Darkness, right? And that's what consumed all of the city of Japan.
I like that name a lot as a
Star of Darkness.
As the weapon.
Yes.
The apocalyptic weapon.
Right. A dark star. What would that even be?
It's like a eclipse is the only thing you can really imagine. It's just kind of that bright halo ring in the center, just of
blackness.
Yeah.
So there's a guy in, I think it was Australia, but I can't remember where, but he's standing on top of a mountain and he's like, I'm just waiting here for the end of the world, basically. He's just looking out and waiting for the world to end. And he says something very interesting. He says, when did humans think they've got so big that they could protect gods, is what he says. He says nature. But he says, when did human beings think they got so big they could protect nature? But what I think the way to read that is to put the word gods in there or something like that, or God. It's like, when did human beings think that they could actually do anything about this or change this? But it's fascinating that in preserving nature, you're preventing it from changing when change is the most natural of things, right? And that's my wording here, but that is maybe some of where this game is heading, right? Mm-hmm. So then we have to go start looking for all the freaking star stones. All over the place. You find them all over the place. The first one you get is from this guy, though. And then there's a star stone we got earlier in the game that we didn't know what it was. And then you have to go, I think, Liam, to the freaking...
Liam picked up one at the end of his battle with the mud doll.
Oh, yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, what's this? It's not important. And then the penguins have one.
Yep.
So you got to go give a rose to a penguin and get the sun or the star stone, sunstone. So we're hearing some interesting things, though. We have the dark star, the star of darkness, and then we're getting the stones of sun, right? The sunstones. We're getting some heavenly imagery showing back up here towards the end of the game. And then once we collect all the sunstones and then put them in that like graveyard kind of place where we put it all together, this is where it is revealed that the whole time Ark is the hero, but the hero of darkness.
Yes.
He is not the hero of light.
Yes.
He is the hero of darkness. And Ark doesn't know how to take this, right? This isn't really making sense to him.
Because he's speaking to his
self.
Doppelganger, the light version of himself. Just like there's a light and dark version of El and the Weavers and all kinds of people.
Yeah.
There's now the light world version of him who sort of appears to him and kind of explains this, though he appears in shadowed form, but
of course,
it's kind of funny.
but sometimes, remember, with the resurrection of the animals and whatnot, or especially when the humans are resurrected, you do see like a shadow Ark kind of show up, and then it shows Ark, right? Yeah. But this shadow has been here, and we've seen it before. And yes, it is dark side Ark, because there are external world people and there are internal world people. And then this is where he says, well, let's put it this way. If Earth's history is like a clock, we're in the 13th hour.
Yep, time that should not exist.
Yep, and that is where the end of Chapter 3 happens. And Ark's world has just completely fallen apart. And
he literally dies.
Yes, yeah.
He dies for real here and is reborn.
And is reborn as a baby.
Chapter 4.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the way Chapter 4 begins is so interesting. It's so fascinating because you have El is basically just taking care of this little baby, right? And then Underworld El shows up and like steals the baby from El.
Yep.
And so when El starts taking care of it too, El is like, oh, this baby reminds me of someone, which is what everyone in the game says when it means something deeper, right? When they're seeing somebody that they knew in a previous life, right? It's like, oh, this is this baby, the way it looks at me. I don't know. This was interesting. So El from the Underworld takes the baby and kind of carries it out. And she seems to be acting like a zombie. She's like not doing what she actually wants to do. but she's just kind of going through the motions, like, oh, okay, pick up baby, walk out. L, about Light World L, we're going to have to start distinguishing now, which is unfortunate. But she freaks out. Oh no, the baby's gone. And then Dark World L shows up in this like dark place and is like, okay, it is revealed that she's sent to kill this baby, right? This is the child that will undo all the work that the dark side has done, and we need to kill it now.
This is an attempt by Dark Gaia to break the cycle.
Yeah.
To break the cycle. Because remember, we go all the way back to that mural, that Tibetan mural. You have Ark comes through, kills the monster, dies. Then the grass grows or the flower grows. The yak eats it. The bird comes in and kills and eats that and multiplies. Then the monster comes, and then Ark comes and kills the monster again, and then dies again.
Ark dies again. Yeah.
So this is the Dark Gaia's attempt to sort of intervene in the process of the cycle and break it. But we're getting to that point where we're going to start the cycle over again. We're at the end of the world, and the dark cycle is going to start. But he wants to make sure it remains that way. Yeah. And that no one will then come through and revive the light side again. And this new baby Ark, is the one who will eventually do that.
So is this light Ark then?
This reborn baby is both light and dark Ark together. That's right. So by killing this Ark is like killing them both. He's getting rid of Ark in the cycle. But at the end of the game, there's that part where there's a separation again. Like Light Ark talks to you and says like, right. And so then like they're back to being split. But at this point in this rebirth as the hero, it's both of their souls in one being.
Because you think that this is moving towards the break the cycle narrative, right?
Right.
And it's emerging, it's Hegel, it's synthesis, where this is how, oh, wait a second, things get pulled back apart and they go back to how they were.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful ending. I love the ending. I can't wait to talk about it.
The ending it's probably my favorite ending of any video game.
Yeah, I think there's one mistake they made, but it's going to be exciting. Yomi shows up. Yomi is the one who is telling L to kill Ark. And are there two Yomis?
There's two Yomis. There's two Yomis. There's a light and dark Yomi.
So
Dark Yomi was the one that was our companion through the game.
Yes, and
he was allied with Dark Gaia.
Yeah.
Now that he's betrayed us and left, we get Light Yomi to then join us for the rest of the game.
But is it Light Yomi through the rest of the game, or does Dark Yomi come back?
No. We have Light Yomi with us.
Okay.
As a companion.
All right. So I'm confused about this because despite the fact that Dark Yomi said for us to die.
Yes.
Light Yomi replaces him, and then we're just as chummy with him as we were with Dark Yomi.
Yeah. It's almost like he's the same guy.
Okay. It feels that way.
Except that he's allied with Light Gaia, who is trying to keep the cycle going, and Dark Gaia is trying to break the cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
As Dark Gaia does.
As Dark Gaias do.
Dark Gaia. So the voice of all living things begins to talk to us. And this is crazy too. The Dark Side L. Yomi also tells Dark Side L to kill Light Side L.
Yes.
So it's not just Baby Ark. It's like, kill this guy too. Just start killing people. Elle isn't, I don't think she's a trained assassin or anything. Like she's killing a baby's one thing, and even to convince her to do that seemed to really weigh on her. Just have her start killing other people, especially her literal twin, is like, okay, too far, right? So Elle just freezes. She's just like, I don't know what to do. I'm not doing anything now. Like, I'm not listening to you guys, but I don't know what to do, right? Because she is in this weird situation. She doesn't belong in the light world, right? So, but she's being told things by these people she respects, but she obviously has discovered enough to where, like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And it's at least in part because, and we are controlling Light Ark right now.
Well, it's like their two souls have been combined.
Well, but the baby's still there, is all I'm saying. Well, there's still a baby, right? Or does the baby grow up? Actually,
the baby grows up.
That's right.
The baby actually does just grow up into the hero who we then control for the end of the game.
Baby Ark just kind of becomes adult Ark.
Yeah.
Don't ask questions. Just don't do it. You're missing the point of the game when you ask questions.
This is going back to what what I was saying in one of the early episodes
about like fairy tales and
this game is not written in the spirit of a modern type of hero's tale or something like that. It's written more in the spirit of classic fairy tales or Greek mythology or really, really ancient stories that
stories that compress time.
Yeah, they compress time. They have really strange sort of things that happen, but it's all written as archetypes and symbols, and that's what's going on here.
Yeah,
it's not meant to be read in this very literal way. Right. Nothing in this game is really. It would be absurd if you were to try to read it in that way, because nothing flows logically. It's kind of why I've said in my coverage of this game over the years that it's so hard for me to articulate what makes the game special to me, because so much of it is just more of this intuitive sort of spiritual message that's speaking to me, that it's not something you can really logically articulate.
Right.
And either like you're feeling that or you're not. And so, when I see people struggling with it or not liking it, it kind of just hurts a little bit, because I know there's nothing I can say to like make it better or make it make sense or something like that.
It's just a way of thinking.
It's just it's a story structure that is from a much different time where stories were written in a different way and with a different purpose in mind, I feel like, rather than getting you to believe in like a human being that is like one that you have seen in your daily life and can understand. Yeah. It's more, how do I create characters as symbols of ideas and concepts that I kind of throw into this almost surreal or abstract set of events that we all understand is not literal. It's just meant to make you think about the archetype, and then you take that and then apply it, in a more sort of personal way. I don't really know how to articulate that better. I still feel like I'm not doing it that well.
It's not easy to articulate.
Homer did not write stories the same way that Brandon Sanderson does, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, if you were going into this game with kind of that modern expectation of how magic is described almost scientifically in Brandon Sanderson novels, where there's always a set of rules, and I'm not. This is by no way, by the way,
he's a good author,
meant to tell you one is better than the other.
Right.
I like both types.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just saying that if you're questioning the logic of Terranigma in the way that you would a Brandon Sanderson novel, I feel like you're missing the intention of the creators there. They were writing in a very different way, I feel like. That was more mytho-poetic in its structure.
There's a difference that once again, Martin Heidegger brings up in the two modes of thinking. And he talks about the computational or the technical way of thinking. And then he says there's also a meditative mode of thinking. Yeah. And this game is less on the computational technical side and is more on the meditative side. And the meditative is something that Heidegger was afraid that with the advent of technology and AI and all this stuff, that it would be lost. It would eventually just be lost, that we would lose the ability or the desire to value anything meditative or contemplative instead of just the technical, kind of stuff. And I think that's a big difference. This game is meditative, absolutely, and it's a lot less computational. Yeah. You're not going to come up with here's the facts and logic for why this game is a good game. Right? It's not it. It's just it makes you think. It puts you in a different mode, and an important
Terranigma
mode.
Destroyed by facts and logic.
Oh my god! I'll bet you. Here's the thing. I'll bet you can destroy this game with facts and logic. You can destroy
this game. That's exactly what I'm saying.
But the only way to defend it is through meditation and intuition. That's how you defend it.
Yeah, and anyway,
because it's valuable. It's valuable in its own way. So, the devil, I believe. So I just wrote the devil, elder, dark Gaia, right?
Yeah.
Based on the very beginning of this game, it says that there were always existed from the beginning two
light
forces.
Side and dark side.
Yes, and then it says these came to be known as God and the devil. Right. So it's very important, that distinction there. It's saying these two things were existing first. These two oppositional forces existed. Then later we began to call them God and devil. It doesn't just say God and devil. It says and it's just kind of trying to connect this abstract way of thinking to the rational, or to words that we understand, right?
Yeah.
God, devil. Okay, great. But is also at the same time putting a barrier there saying, but it is not God and devil. Right. It is light and dark forces that just exist, right? So the word Diablo, I talked about this earlier on in a segment that got cut, so I have to throw this in here.
The word got cut because
was this.
Yeah.
It's talking about this. Talking about the end of the game. Diablo means to throw across. That's technically what the Greek means for Diablo. But what it really typically is referencing is division or pulling apart, right? The idea is to throw apart. And the opposite of diabolo in the Greek is a word called symbolo, right? Which is where we get the idea for symbol. And the symbolo in the Greek means to throw together or to bring together, right? So a symbol collects things together, right? Things from that you wouldn't think about, often abstract things or spiritual things or physical things, and bringing them together and connecting them through this connection here. Well, Diablo undoes the knot and takes these things and throws them apart, right? And that's the word for devil. The word for devil comes from the old Greek word diabolo, which means to divide, basically, is the idea. And when you look at it that way, you see different things. I'm not saying like sympathy for the devil necessarily. I'm just saying that when you understand what the word means, and often the word that is used is something like adversary or something like that. There's different words used, but Diablo in particular carries a specific meaning.
Obviously, in Western, Christian thinking, there was assigned this evil and good to the forces of light and dark in its, I don't want to call it mythology, but in its religious mythos.
Mythology works. Mythos is good.
And what this game, and actually a lot of stuff, I feel like, I don't know if this is a more recent thing, at least in this country, but they're more exploring this possibly more Eastern philosophy that chaos and order are just two forces, and we're assigning this idea of evil and good to them, but really they're just these agnostics, not the right word, but anyways, they're neither good nor evil. They're just two forces. They're just two opposites.
They simply are.
They just exist, and there's no inherent morality to them. Right. They just exist in this balance that we call the universe or life or whatever you want to call it.
And because this game is called The Creation of Heaven and Earth in Japanese and has direct reference to the first book of Genesis, it's interesting to note that in the beginning, God separated light from dark, right? And that's like the first act, right? And you could say God created the dark, but God's act of creation in the book of Genesis is one of dividing.
Yeah.
He divides the light from the dark. He divides land from water. He divides the waters above with the firmament. He's dividing, right? He's doing an act that can be referenced by the term diabolo, right? Which is interesting. It's just interesting. And of course,
that leads into a whole Gnostic interpretation that Jehovah is a demiurge,
Satan,
who is dividing the light and the dark and the light.
And it's fascinating to look at something like this and to say light and dark are aspects of God, right? That God didn't say, I'm creating light and darkness is bad. It's like, no, I am creating both, and I'm doing so by dividing things apart, right? Not by reuniting things together or uniting things together. So that's fascinating. It's just fascinating as just a brute fact, right? And then the devil is known as the divider, the one that throws things apart, right? Or across, right? And when we see the elder here, and we can essentially connect him now to Dark Gaia, which is Dark Gaia the blue orb, more or less? Is that symbolizing Dark Gaia?
I suppose it could be. I didn't really ever think of that, but maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I wonder. I think
I mean, the final boss is pretty blue in terms of its color, but
I think that the blue orb is Dark Gaia, right? And that's what we're seeing. It's the light of this world. It's like the god, the power. And so the elder essentially is equated with Dark Gaia, which is this thing, right? But this thing also, based on from the beginning of the game, is like, this is what we call the devil, right?
Yeah.
It's this dark force, right? That's been there from the beginning. But that even the word for devil, meaning to divide things, it's not inherently a bad thing. That's maybe the whole point that I'm trying to make. Diabolo doesn't mean bad.
Yeah.
You would think,
in its original form, like the Greek word was not an inherently like evil word, the way that it's become associated with Christian religious mythos.
Yes. And even that's true even of the word demiurge. Demiurge just means servant. It doesn't mean anything bad necessarily. It when you connect it with certain stories and certain mythos, then it becomes that. But the word itself is like a public servant, basically. Demiurgos is where it is. And so these words, they kind of have their own meanings, and they come to mean different things, but at their core kind of represent facts or forces or things that kind of just exist, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I think why I'm having a hard time articulating this is because I do believe in an objective good and bad. I do hold to something like that. Yeah. But what this game is saying is that maybe we don't understand these things completely, and that what we call the devil may be something literally created by God to begin with, right? Which is just interesting to think about.
Yeah.
I think I should stop talking.
Yeah, no, I'm catching what you're saying. Let's see if I can go somewhere with it. There's a certain process, at least for my own life, that I've gone through where, I grew up in a religious household, and there's a certain black and whiteness to which the world was painted for me,
right, and
to which I saw it. And it's stuff like this game and like Xenogears, especially for a lot of kids at the time, was like their launching point for opening the worldview way more open. If you looked into any of the Gnostic interpretations, that alone was like, whoa, wait a second. You're telling me
and that's early.
The snake in the Garden of Eden was Jesus, not Satan? Yeah. That's like the whole opposite of what I was freaking told my whole life, right?
Yeah.
So, there was a certain fears within, religious communities of, I don't know how to put this either, because again, I'm not trying to I really don't want to paint like a whole culture with one stroke. I'm not trying to do that. And I know that, individual families are different. My family was really open in certain ways that other, families in the culture were not, and vice versa. All I'm trying to say is that it's I think a healthy, important, and really fascinating process to start turning that coin over and examining the other side without fear of it, and realizing it's not what you thought it was. And I've had so many instances of those kinds of realizations in my life since leaving that culture, where it was like, oh my gosh, this thing I was always told was like horrible and you should definitely never ever touch that. And then, I look at it, I examine it more closely and go, wait a minute, there's actually all of these really interesting benefits.
Right.
And it just blows up your whole freaking universe in your head. It's like, wait a second, right? And so this is not even to say that, we all need to abandon our principles and go adopt
true.
the opposite principles. The idea,
maybe that's the struggle I'm having, because that's not what I'm saying. I feel like
that's not what we're trying to say.
I'm approaching that, and I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying.
It's not about abandoning principles. It's about not being afraid of examining the ones that you've been taught are wrong or immoral or evil, and being willing to adopt the ones that are good, while letting go of the ones that maybe you didn't think long and hard enough about, and maybe those are harmful, but keeping the ones that really are good. And there's so many examples of that too for me, where it's like, this and this and this I was taught growing up. I would never, ever, ever even think of abandoning those principles. Those are core to who I am. Sure. And they always will be. And like, it's good that I was raised in the culture that I was that instilled those principles in me.
Right.
I would never, ever go back and undo that. I feel like it was such a good thing. And there are other things where it's like there's a very closed mind to this or this or this aspect, or a sort of like a cultural bias against it. And then I go look at those things and it's like, oh, actually, it's not what I thought it was.
Right.
It's not even about like, should you adopt it? It's almost just like, is the world really the way that it's described by this singular culture over here that warns you and tries to create fear around these things?
Sure.
And it's like, even if I don't necessarily adopt that thing that I went and explored, at least I know what it is.
Sure.
A lot more clearly now than I did before.
Okay, I in you talking, this is very good, because I have a few, there's a reason. So Dante's Divine Comedy, I just got done reading the Inferno recently, and God in this book sends Virgil to go bring Dante to him. The point is, God is reaching out to Dante and saying, come to me, right? And Dante, following Virgil, immediately begins a descent down into hell first, right? That in order to get where he wants to go, that there's a value to descending first.
Sure.
And or to that. There's also a quote, I remember this from a long time ago, but it's that the act of contemplating God entails descending down into the deepest abyss and contemplating the highest high, basically, and across like the breadth of time, right? Like to stretch your mind to the point where you are able to. It's not just up; it's down and up, because both of these points are leading you maybe towards God. It's like what Carl Jung said, that people don't find God because they don't look low enough. And this also...
That's a really good line.
This also echoes a lot of Dostoevsky's work, because he was a very religious man, but he discovered God in the lowest points, right? Where he's saying that like sometimes the deepest suffering is an entry point to something greater, right? And that's weird to talk about, especially to someone who is suffering. And Dostoevsky knew a lot about that. He lived a very, very difficult life, and some of it was his own doing. He was addicted to gambling, and he just had a rough go at it. But he came to get a respect and an appreciation for people who are living in this low way of like deep suffering, right? And he was able to write and speak directly to their experiences in such a beautiful way that almost kind of like suffering is good, right? Like almost in that way, sort of. In suffering, you know yourself. In suffering, you connect with God. Like this whole thing that's just like, whoa, I thought the whole point was to avoid suffering, And he is saying no. And same thing with William Blake. William Blake said that there must be suffering in heaven, otherwise...
this is essentially the point I was trying to say in the past when we would talk about immortality and that sort of stuff, right?
Right.
It's not even like it kind of like became is immortality good or bad? And that's we need to get beyond good and evil on this topic.
Beyond immortality.
Beyond whether immortality is good or evil or good or bad. It's more like immortality without constant challenge. And, I don't want to use the word suffering, but that is what it is.
Resistance.
Without going through periods of suffering, there is no growth.
Yeah.
Without challenges and trials and difficulties and things to overcome, life quickly becomes not worth living.
Yeah.
It results in a boredom, what I would call like true damnation, being stopped from progression.
Yeah.
You can't move forward anymore. Right. You're stuck where you are. You'll never move past this point.
Right.
You're confined. That to me is what actual damnation would be or would represent, or what like the ultimate suffering would be. And so in heaven or in immortality or whatever hypothetical situation we want to throw out there, without that, without something to challenge you, without something to give you something to overcome or strive for, I just think that life has very little purpose without that.
There's something also later on that I have here. I believe this was Ian McGilchrist. He says, nothing can be created, nothing can come into being without resistance. Right. And then C.S. Peirce, this was maybe 250 years ago, he said, a thing without oppositions, ipso facto, does not exist.
Yeah.
Right. That existence lies in opposition. Right.
Yes.
There's something about that. And I think that's what William Blake was getting at when he said there must be suffering in heaven. He says, for how else could you know joy without the suffering?
Right.
Like it just must be the case. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think we've belabored this point pretty well.
The point is to say this is how you reconcile dark side and light side not being inherently good or evil.
You've got it. Yeah. There you go.
They are one. They are the same thing experienced at different degrees, and they are both necessary for life to have any purpose or meaning. Without one or the other, if too much suffering without any joy is also a misery not worth experiencing, and too much joy with no suffering is just boredom. Right. It loses its value, it loses its meaning without the opposite. So that is at the heart of the entire yin-yang symbol
I think so.
And everything it represents, I would say.
So after this whole thing happens with the baby and Ark is an adult all of a sudden, and then we go back and talk to Elle, she says she didn't know that it was us. She was sent to kill a baby, a nondescript baby. This will save the world if only you kill this baby, right? And she had no idea that that baby was Ark, right? So she's pretty horrified at her own actions there. But we go and we confront her, and then this is, of course, where we get light side Yomi, and then it's like away with dark side Yomi, in with light side Yomi, and we're pals just like the dark dude. We start teasing each other, and it's super fun. But then, of course, we make this move towards Baruga's like final... His like airship.
Mayho kind of organizes this, right? Grabs all your pals together from across time. It's so funny to me
hilarious,
that
dude.
Like Fida and Elle, who are more like medieval age characters,
that's right, yeah.
And Mayho and Maylin, who are like ancient China, Tibetan characters, all exist in the same time as 90s Kid.
Yes.
And we're all going to go at the end of the world to like fight Baruga and keep the cycle going.
That's pretty freaking funny.
That's what I'm saying when I say you can't take anything here literally. These people should not exist in the same time because they're not people, they're archetypes.
Right.
That's how the game should be viewed.
That's exactly it. So this dungeon was, it was kind of basic in my personal opinion. The way that everything works, like touch this button at the same time, and but everyone's so excited. It gave me some Final Fantasy VIII vibes a little bit. Certainly some Final Fantasy VI, and I'd have to think about some others. But the games where it's all of a sudden the stakes are still high, but everyone's just kind of having fun and treating it like this is just like we're having a good time here, instead of this deep, serious, what I think maybe should be the case of like, this is it. This is the end of the world. What we're doing is going to define everything from here on out. And mostly it's just like an action movie, kind of just like a thriller, just like, boom, we're going about, oh, this is scary. Oh, I knew Peril would show up and ride his skateboard around again. Oh, that guy, I love it. And I didn't really feel the stakes a whole ton. And then the way that Baruga dies in the end, which is the way that dude from Indiana Jones, the like falling into the spinning propeller, like, oof, that's a rough one. It's a rough way to go. But there's some irony in the fact that he was done in by his own invention, first of all, and also that he prayed to Dark Gaia to save him before he died.
Yeah.
And then it just didn't happen, right? So it's almost like there was something to do with fate that was more powerful than whatever he can overcome in his plans.
Yeah.
And it just pushed him into his freaking spinning blade.
Dark Gaia was just using him all along.
Clearly was
to
the
break
case.
the cycle. That's it.
So he says, Dark Gaia, save me. And then he just doesn't. He doesn't get saved. He's like blown by the wind or something.
Yeah,
but
falls
then
off
the whole thing is like going to crash. And everyone's like, oh no, let's say our goodbyes. But of course, they don't die. So that's fun. Columbus has some words of wisdom, which I can't remember. I just wrote Columbus, such wisdom, but I don't remember what he said.
Oh, shoot. I didn't write down the dialogue.
I have to delete this part. So then the only thing to do now, once we've saved the world above, is to journey back down into the underworld, go back down to the world below, and to maybe confront Dark Gaia and to kind of bring closure to this whole thing.
Put it back in its place. Put the universe back in order. In balance.
Back in balance.
Back in balance.
And we go down the same way that those 4 orbs descended down into that, warp spiral hole. We jump down into that same
vortex.
thing. Yeah, like a vortex that goes to the underworld. And it makes me wonder, did something similar happen? What were those 4 orbs that descended down, or was it 5 that kind of go into the towers? Was that from a previous cycle jumping back down in, right? So we're essentially capping off this cycle, jumping back down in, and everything else, I suppose, is going to follow us down, right? Yeah. And then go back to the towers, and then something is going to happen again. Something like that.
Yeah.
So the elder tells us, if you never found out, you could have been happy. Remember, he came to us in the vision, and he was just like, hey, your work's done, come back down, everything's good. Somehow, attaining knowledge led to a lessening of being happy.
Gnosticism.
Yes, absolutely. And somehow...
Gnosis, I should say, not Gnosticism.
Gnosis, yeah.
Gnosis.
To gain the Gnosis means to experience a fall, basically. And so somehow, we could have been happy, but would it have been worth it, right? We would have been living a life in ignorance. And ignorance is bliss. That's basically what he's saying. Ignorance is bliss. Buddy, you know too much. Now we're in trouble. And is this even relevant? Light created life, and dark destroyed what was unnecessary. Is that me, or was that a line from the game?
That sounds like when you're walking on that like crystal blue bridge at the end towards the Dark Gaia.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like that freaking crazy, looks like you're in space or something. It sounds like a line. That sounds like a line that would have come during that part.
Okay. So light created life, and dark destroyed what was unnecessary. So then he says that light will no longer exist, nor shadow. They will be combined and such, which is, of course, the idea of synthesis. And this is where I came up with Marshall McLuhan's work as the preservation of duality. This is non-synthesis.
Dark Gaia's goal.
Yeah, so Dark Gaia,
end the cycle,
Dark Gaia's goal.
Synthesize it into,
bring it all into one, right? And then, of course, Dark Gaia. This is wild, by the way. It's like a ice god thingy surrounded by baby robot heads.
Yeah, I would say like rather than ice, it's crystal. It's crystal blue.
See, and I kept confusing those from down there. So the crystals surrounded by baby heads then.
Yeah.
Anyways, so freaking wild boss, really good. And then we fight on a star platform that is the shape of a pentagon. Yeah. So we are the representation of the forces of 5, right? Yeah. Quintet.
Yes,
we
quintet.
are the leader of Quintet, and we are fighting against
also this
the synthesis
boss is
of the world.
Freaking asshole. He never comes down where you can attack him. He's always flying up here and you're like, can't freaking hit him. You have to wait and just dodge a million attacks. some people have brought this up, and I thought I would at least validate that. Like, some of the bosses are just really not fun really hard, in the game.
Unless you're
it's not even that they're hard. It's just it's not fun because you cannot attack the thing. It is flying above the screen, like shooting things at you, and you're just like waiting there for sometimes like 30 seconds to a minute at a time, and then it comes down for like 2 seconds and then goes back up again, and it's like, oh my gosh, dude, like
that's crazy.
That. So, one of my favorite games of all time. Obviously, it's not the greatest in terms of boss designs.
So then we hear a new voice. I think it specifies that there's a new voice. And finally, Dark Gaia is sealed, which is what is supposed to happen. And then the voice inside that we hear is our true self, is what it says.
Right, I think it's Light Arc.
Okay.
Because they were combined at this point, and now they're going to be split again.
Right.
So this is Light Arc speaking to Dark Arc in his subconscious or something.
So we were created by Dark Gaia to rule the planet as his own, right? So that was kind of like the whole goal. And Yomi, this is where we learn what Yomi kind of technically even is.
Yep. He's like he's
the first life form.
The first life form from the primordial soup.
Yes.
That's what he is.
Which it's not a single cell. It's like this big fish, basically. I freaking love it. Maybe he is a single cell thing. He just is bigger now.
He's just
powers of scale.
They used Honey, I Shrunk the Kids from the second movie where he blows up the baby or whatever. He used machine to blow up
Honey,
the
single-celled
organism from the primordial soup into something you can actually see.
With eyes, it can't be single-celled. Can't be. And then, of course, Yomi goes back. He's like, don't worry. He says he'll sleep until someone else strays from the flock, is what he said there. So it's like, oh, that's so interesting. That's such an interesting thing to say. And then Light Gaia is essentially the 4 blue orbs. That's like what Light Gaia is. And then Arc is a mix between Light and Dark Gaia in a way at this point, right?
Yep.
But you're right, they're going to be separated out. Then we go back to Krista. And the return to Krista was so interesting. This is where I think there's one slightly maybe missed opportunity. Maybe you can change my mind on this.
Okay.
We go back into Krista, and it's just as it was before. Everyone is basically saying the same things, except they have much deeper meaning now. One of the twins that's over by the chickens says, boys and girls are bound by a promise from an earlier life, right? It's like, oh, that line hits so much harder now.
Yeah.
And then the guy in the lake, and then one of the guys over by the shops, I think, down in the southeast, he says the same line, oh, look at the blue, there's shapes of people. But then he adds in this line, oh, I just saw a reflection of L passing by, right? And then we know that's light side out or something like that.
Right.
Like, oh, man, this all means so much more now. These are lives of people. So now it makes sense when they're saying, oh, the blue, what is it called?
Crystal blue.
Crystal blue. It's the lives of people that they're passing before our eyes. We're just seeing the beauty of their life in a glimpse, in a blip, in a moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a literal little bubble.
Yep. Just a little pale dot.
Everything that encompasses a human being's life.
Which, if they saw it, they'd be like, that's a stereotype. That wasn't my whole life. And then, of course, we hear the line that crystal blue is reflected in Arc's own eyes. Right?
Yes.
And I think this is because they're together at the moment, light and dark, I think. And then this was the part where I think was a missed opportunity. It was very difficult. I could see what was happening here, and it was very difficult for me to choose to go to bed.
Yeah.
It took me, I had to talk to everyone, sometimes multiple times. I had to go everywhere, search every corner, and finally, when there was nothing left to do, I very slowly approached the bed, and then I made the decision to go to sleep, and the screen turned black. That should have been the end of the game.
To just end...
That
no credits. Well, credits on black. You mean?
Yes, you have to do credits, but they come back after that.
Oh,
he wakes up. We have a dream of a bird. I think he begins to
flying through the world.
Yeah,
while the credits roll.
There's a dream which is a bird just kind of flying around as things kind of change and basically approaches like these skyscrapers, I think, and flies to like a city. But at first is in like this forested place, right?
Right.
But is just kind of flying around, and we have a dream that we are a bird. I like it. I don't hate the dream, but there's also a post-credits scene that happens that you mentioned before, where L meets somebody again.
And my interpretation is that that's a light arc.
That's a light arc.
Light arc is returning to the top side.
That maybe helps it a little bit more.
It's not dark arc.
Okay. So
I can at least
I was thinking that is that arc?
That's not dark arc.
But it's
dark
not
arc went to sleep for real.
Okay. So dark arc is having a dream of a bird, whereas light arc,
remember the first lines Arc speaks in the game? I was in a dream. I was having the same dream every night.
Same dream every night. And then
it's because it's every night's the same dream. Every night he goes to sleep because he's just resurrected the whole freaking world and goes back to sleep again.
Right.
That's his day.
That's his one day.
The cycle of the game is Arc's day. And he goes to bed and goes to sleep and dreams and does it all again.
What if
he's going to wake up and do it again? And he's going to say that I just had this crazy dream. It's setting up the cycle to repeat.
Right.
And so the waking up being the beginning of the game and the going to sleep being the end of the game is that the point on the circle in which it connects and starts over again.
And maybe that's why I think that the game should have just ended when he goes to sleep.
I don't even disagree with that. I think
it was powerful.
I think you make a valid point that you could just go to the credit sequence with the bird flying.
Sure.
And have the credits playing, and you don't necessarily need to have the
L with Arc at the end,
the post credits thing. But yeah, it's just the moment where he hits the bed and you see the Z's and it just slowly fades to black is so moving to me.
It is.
It's really, really hard to describe. How beautiful of a bow they're tying on the theme here, and then the music is just masterful for the credits sequence. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
The credit sequence is phenomenal. That bird that's flying through, and then there's like that crazy looking airship thing that almost looks like a seagull itself, and it's like
that's
flying around with that thing for a while. And
that's right. Yeah,
the Mode 7 graphics and everything else.
I thought I was going to run into the building at the end. I was like, no, don't fly into the window, and it zooms away.
But it's like it's carrying into that dream he described waking up from at the beginning.
Yeah,
I keep having the same dream. Well, yeah. You wake up and you go do it again. You go to sleep and it's the same dream and you go do it again.
And it's so funny because he seems not necessarily happy with it. Right?
He just doesn't know what it means. He's just like, I don't understand it. It's like he wakes up having lost his memory.
That's what it feels like.
What happened.
Yeah. He's lost his memory, but he remembers the dream.
Yeah.
And he goes around and does it all again. But in the performing of it and the being in the world, and the embodiment, maybe his memory's gone, but his body, the experience of these things is still accumulating in his body, that there is some way in which he is attaining wisdom or value or meaning in some way that is something that is to be learned in the repetition of doing things. Yeah. And he has this longing to break from the cycle, but also there's this maybe other part of him that also longs to remain in the cycle. And maybe that's the conflict that he has within himself, that there's two sides of him, right?
Yeah.
And, once things go too far one way, he kind of pulls it back,
Yeah. And I also love how this, in a meta sense, makes replays of the game feel like it's a continuation of the story, the sequel, so to speak, to Terranigma, rather than a replay.
Your second play.
It's just you're waking up and you're going and doing the cycle again. And you may do things a little bit differently this time than last time. It's not going to be exactly the same. Maybe this time you won't revive or expand all the towns, or maybe this time you'll die on this boss or whatever. You'll get lost in this place instead of this place, or you'll forget to go do the ayahuasca trip or whatever. It won't be exactly the same each time you do it.
Right.
But the cycle more or less continues in the same way each time. It always ends in the same place and begins in the same place.
Right.
It all ends up going the same place.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's just something really interesting about that, both inside the game and on the more meta side for the replays as the player. Yeah. And I just think it's a really perfect ending. I struggle to think. I mean, there's been a lot of great endings in games.
Yeah.
I think have we done a video on that yet? I feel like we were talking about.
We did, but then it was like it would just be spoilers.
Just be the spoiler of the video.
Spoil every game, every great game.
But this is up there. I mean, this would be probably my favorite one. It's It's really fantastic. It's really thoughtful. It's really clever, really deep. Has a lot of meaning to me.
Yeah, beautiful and meaningful.
And it's got that duality of the sad, bittersweetness, but also just hopeful, sort of like there is a future. There is something better, or at least something coming after.
Yeah, something beautiful. We'll just put it that way. There's something beautiful.
Yeah, right.
Here's another, which is also Dante, by the way. But what was your total gameplay time?
I think on this playthrough is less than 20 hours. I want to say it's maybe 13 or 12 or something.
Oh, dang.
It would be awesome if it was 13, actually. It'd be perfect.
Well, that's funny. Well, I was actually thinking, because mine was a lot closer to 20.
I think on your first playthrough, it's way more typical for it to be closer to 20.
Yeah.
But once you've beaten it before and you know what to do, you can almost cut that in half.
I was almost wondering if they were aiming for 24 hours in
that'd be interesting.
The amount of time it takes to play the game.
It's either 13
or 24. 13 on your 24 on your first play, 13 on your second on your replay. And then it's like boom, you got the symbolism.
You got it all.
Oh man. Goodness, man, what a great experience. What a wonderful game.
Yeah.
I have nothing more to add.
I really thought at some point along the way, maybe I would find the words. We've said a lot of words. None of them have,
that we did.
None of them have been sufficient to explain the experience I have had when I hit that credit scene, both on the first playthrough and then recently while I was just meditating, basically. I was meditating, staring into a fire with headphones on, and the music from the ending credits came on, and I was just moved to tears listening to that music while I was meditating on life and its meaning and things of this nature. And there is just something really, really deeply spiritual about this game for me that I cannot explain sufficiently, so I will stop trying, other than to say that's how I feel when I get to the end. And that's how I feel listening to that music. And that's how I feel watching that seagull fly around on the screen. And that's how I feel when I see Ark going to sleep and the screen slowly fading to black.
Yep.
It's a deeply spiritual experience, this game is for me. And that's why I regard it as highly as I do. When we look at the game in terms of the technical qualities of its action combat and boss design and things of this nature.
Dungeon design.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend like this does it better than most of Terranigma's contemporaries from the time. But what I think it does do better than all of those is understand what life is about and convey that in this surreal, abstract, mythopoetic way in symbols that, to me, I feel were intuitively understood well before they were analyzed or broken down in a way that could be articulated.
I almost wonder if you understand this game better.
I think
before you try to explain it, and then you just confuse yourself.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
That's true for me in many cases.
In the pursuit of trying to articulate it, I actually fumbled a lot more, and I can't really say anything other than you get it or you don't, you feel it or you don't, and if you don't, it doesn't mean you're wrong. I've been kind of talking about this a little bit with some chats in our Patreon, but I don't like Half-Life 2. I'm just not a Half-Life 2 fan.
Oh, dear.
For whatever reason, the game did not work for me.
Okay.
I am the unfortunate one in this case.
Well, you don't get the experience.
And so all I'm saying is that there's something about this game that the creator was trying to communicate, and I connected. Like it happened.
The energy,
the bonding occurred. And if it doesn't occur for you, it's okay. Like, you don't have to
play it again when you're our age,
or play something else that gives you that.
Sure, yeah, there's plenty.
Maybe there's a different story that will help you get there better. Focus on that instead. But for me, this game did it to a degree that was only surpassed, I think, by Outer Wilds. And that's a moment that will be really hard to ever recreate, or at least have an experience of equal sort of profundity for me.
Yeah, that'll be hard. That'll be hard.
Anyway, it was that kind of experience for me. But that's all I got to say.
I agree. Yeah, it was a very profound experience for me as well. Yes, it's a very spiritual game. I agree with everything you said. And I wish there were more games like it. I wish it was more successful. I wish the creators were still around doing stuff.
I do too. If it ever happens that I decide, hey, I'm going to make a video game. I'm going to learn how to make a video game. I'm going to make one. I think I would make one in the spirit of Terranigma. I'm not talking about gameplay systems necessarily, but
I see. Like story and theme.
The type of story told. I think that
you have Christopher Columbus in your game.
I would use a lot of mythopoetic and archetypal type storytelling rather than trying to do a Last of Us or something on that kind of level of, like, character-driven narrative. I just think games are actually really uniquely suited for this type of thing, and I don't think it's explored enough.
That's a good point, actually.
We're leaving it a little more open. Actually, I do think games like Dark Souls and Sekiro and Elden Ring are similar in the fact that the story is told through you exploring the world and looking for it. And I'm not saying that the other type of storytelling isn't great. I love The Last of Us. I'm not like, and I love other types of games that do have character-driven narratives. I'm just saying that if we already have so much great stuff being done there, and I feel like there's a missed opportunity in the medium where stories in this sort of like mythology type or fairy tale type structure. They can really blossom and flourish as a video game a lot more so than maybe, not more so, but there's more room for it, is I guess what I'm getting at. I'd like to see more of it.
I think that's true. I think that's true. Yeah, me too. All right, guys. Thank you.
That's the end.
Thank you for joining us for this Terranigma podcast.
Final Fantasy IX is coming up next. We are going to be taking a couple weeks to prepare for that.
Yeah.
So Wednesday episodes will be stopping for just a week or two, maybe 3 at the max.
Yeah.
But we got some Ultimanias to read. And some dev history to research. There's a lot more of it for that than there is for some of the stuff we've been covering recently. Yeah. So there's a lot of material to go through, but Final Fantasy IX will be the next game. And there will be a new poll announced soon for what we cover after that on Patreon. So if you appreciate what we do, you'd like to see the show continue, if this content is meaningful for you, please support us. Thank you, guys. See you next time.